Hi everyone, Dale Corvino, co-chair of Manhattan Community Board 4 Transportation Planning Committee. This is our regular October meeting. We're going to follow the agenda that's been posted and also make time for old and new business afterwards. This meeting is a public meeting. It's been recorded and transcribed. All right. So we're going to go over the agenda items, and just a reminder to how it works. The committee will have a discussion and then we'll open it up for comments from the public. We also have a presentation tonight from the DOT, which I think is first up. So I'm just going to go around just for speed's sake. I'm just going to go around and mention all the committee members that are present. We have Janine from CB4's office, who's our facilitator. We have Gwen Billig, Jeffrey LaFrancois. We have Brett Furfer. We have Christine Berthet, the co-chair. We have David Warren. We have David Solnick. We have Martin Treat. We have Raksha Muth. I'm going to butcher your last name, Raksha Muthukumar. And we have Sarah Appleton, and I don't see any other current members. Oh, I see Pete.
Right.
Pete Diaz is here also. Okay, so as they filter in, and we have Colleen Chattergoon from DOT, and we have a couple of other presenters from DOT. Okay, so first item on the agenda, let me get the agenda, is DOT's presentation on city bike expansion and infill in our district. So Colleen, are you leading that?
Hi, my colleagues will be leading that.
Okay. Oh, here's the presentation. Thank you, Janine.
Thanks, Janine, and thanks, Dale. If we're ready to go, I'd be happy to kick it off.
By all means, thank you, Jennifer. And if you could just introduce yourself and your colleagues.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Jennifer Santinez. I'm DOT's Manhattan Deputy Borough Commissioner. I wanted to thank Community Board 4, Jesse, Dale, Janine, and committee members for having us on tonight. I'm joined by my colleagues, Lily Gordon-Coven, Brian Parrott, and Caitlin Toner from DOT's Bike Share program, as well as Colleen Chattergoon from the Manhattan office, who many of you also have the pleasure of working with. So last year, DOT embarked on our 5-year Phase 3 city bike expansion alongside our partner Lyft. And this is going to double the size of the bike share system, triple the number of available bikes in the program. And since City Bike launched in 2013, New Yorkers and visitors have turned time and again to the City Bike system as a healthy, safe, fast, and affordable transportation alternative. And as the city continues to reopen now in a COVID world, we believe that bike share will play a critical role in getting people around the city and back to work. So Phase 3 expansion in Manhattan started this spring. And I will let Lily go into a little bit more detail into what we've done so far. But as the bike share system grows into new neighborhoods, ridership into the existing service area is going to grow as well. So in order to support the demands of a larger system, we're going to add what we're calling infill capacity into CB4. So I wanted to thank the committee again for giving us the opportunity to present. And at this point, I'd like to hand it off to Lily from the bike share team to walk us through tonight's slides. Thanks, Dale.
Thanks, Jennifer, and thanks again for having us. As Jennifer said, my name is Lily Gordon-Coven, and I'm with the Bike Share Group at DOT. So we can go to the next slide, and the next slide. Thanks. So as many of you are familiar, City Bike is our largest bike share system in North America. It's a network of shared bicycles intended for point-to-point transportation, and it offers increased mobility and convenience, really just adding to the suite of transportation options that New Yorkers have. The system operates 24/7, and you don't need to worry about bike storage or maintenance, which is a huge plus in New York, where we have such limited space in our home. The system is a public-private partnership between the City of New York. The DOT is responsible for planning, outreach, and oversight, and our partners at Lyft are responsible for day-to-day operations, equipment, and maintenance. Next slide, please. As Jennifer mentioned, the system has grown since launch. We launched in 2013 with about 6,000 bikes at 330 stations in Manhattan and downtown Brooklyn, and then expanded beginning in 2015 farther uptown and into Queens and deeper into Brooklyn with 12,000 bikes at 750 stations. And we're now in the midst of our largest expansion, what we call phase 3, which will cover the entirety of Manhattan, bring us into the Bronx for the first time, and deeper into Brooklyn and Queens, adding about 35 square miles to the program. Next slide, please. Again, as Jennifer mentioned, the system has been hugely successful. We have over 107 million trips to date, and the bikes are used on average about 5.5 times per day, so that it's a really heavily utilized system. We see about 70,000 trips per day in peak riding months, and over 90,000 trips, sometimes over 100,000 trips on our busiest days in the summer, spring, summer, and fall. We have over 170,000 annual members. So while we know there are a lot of tourists and visitors that use Citi Bike, it's also, the program is really grounded by annual members who are mostly New Yorkers. Next slide, please. So COVID-19 has obviously impacted every part of the city, and Citi Bike is no exception. DOT and Lyft's response has really been to prioritize rider and employee safety. So we've done a couple of things. The first is cleaning high contact areas on all of the bikes when they're returned to the depots. These include seat posts and handlebars, baskets, things like that, as well as disinfecting bikes when they're docked at high use stations near hospitals. And the crews are using social distance practices in the field and while handling bikes. And then the other key piece is the Critical Workforce Membership Program, which began in March, where Lyft, and in partnership with the city, was able to offer free annual memberships to essential workers. So we had about 20,000 essential workers sign up for that program and start using Citi Bike as a safe and healthy way to commute during the pandemic. Next slide, please. And you can go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk a bit more about expansion and infill. Phase 3 is composed of these two pieces, expansion and infill. And expansion is when we bring Citi Bike to new parts of the city and double the geographic size of the system. So we'll be adding about 32,000 docks and 16,000 bicycles in the dark blue area, which is about 35 square miles on the map. Infill is where we add additional capacity to the existing service area, which you can see in gray on the map. We'll be adding about 16,000 docks and 8,000 bicycles in the 33 square miles that already contain almost 30,000 docks. Next slide. So why is infill part of the phase 3 expansion? As a Citi Bike grows, the system will draw more bicycles to its core. So Citi Bike rider gravity, as we call it, pulls bicycles to the center, which is similar to other transit modes. Riders move towards the central business districts, and demand for bikes shifts throughout the day, just like subway demand looks different in the morning going into Manhattan and then switches in the evening. So infill will help a larger system to function. This will support increased demand from the phase 3 service areas, folks on the outer part of the system coming in, as well as help us meet existing unmet demand when riders can't find a bike or a dock in the core already. This will help us improve rebalancing and overall system operations, keeping the system as efficient and useful for riders as possible. Next slide. So a bit about our timeline. Unlike the expansion process, infill is going to work a little bit differently. So dock distribution will be based on rider demand for more capacity, and we're really trying to be responsive to the trends we see in rider data. It's going to be a 4-year ongoing rollout of new stations and expanded stations, and the areas of highest demand will receive the most docks. So as I said, it'll be a rolling installation, and we will be covering multiple community boards at one time, coming back to community boards over the course of the following years, and the iterative planning process will help us address changes in demand as the system expands so we can be really responsive and as efficient as possible. Next slide, please. We have a few different ways that we want to do this infill project through our design toolbox. So the first is to add new stations, and the second is to expand existing stations by adding new docks to stations that are already on the ground. And then the third is creative design solutions like 3D bridging, which you can see here in this photo, which will allow us to have stations that are both on the sidewalk and roadbed. So right now we can have stations that are on the roadbed or stations on the sidewalk, but we don't have the ability to sort of jump the curb. You can see the yellow piping, and this photo is an example of what we hope to do with 3D bridging, which will help us be more efficient with space. Next slide. So the planning process is going to be a bit different from the expansion planning process. We are looking for community feedback on an iterative basis. We have an online feedback portal, which has almost 900 comments to date in the service area, folks telling us where they'd like to see more capacity. And we're also responding to requests from riders and stakeholders throughout the service area. We do pretty detailed station siting. So we use ridership data along with technical siting criteria to identify feasible locations for expanded and new stations. Then we have our community notification process, where we notify property owners adjacent to new or expanded stations, notify the community board and key stakeholders prior to installation. We'll be installing new and expanded stations and conducting ongoing monitoring and responding to any concerns that come up. Next slide. Next slide. So I'm going to walk through the new stations we're proposing for this community board. We have 5 new stations, which you can see in the blue dots on the map. Next slide. The first new station is on 8th Avenue and West 27th Street, which will be on the east side of the street on the sidewalk. Next slide. The second new station is West 35th Street and 9th Avenue on the south side of the street in the roadbed. Next slide. We have 2 new stations on this slide. The first, West 44th Street and 11th Avenue on the north side of the street in the roadbed. And the second, West 50th Street and 10th Avenue on the south side of the street in the roadbed. Next slide. And then we have West 54th Street and 11th Avenue on the north side of the street, also in the roadbed. Next slide. I think that, yes, that concludes the set of new stations. We're happy to take questions. Again, thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back to you to let us know how you'd like to handle the questions.
Thank you, Lily. We'll take questions and comments from the committee members first. Are there any questions? I don't see. Do we have any questions? Yes, Christine.
I have a question. Can you expand on the one at 27 and 8, which is on the sidewalk? What is the context there, and why is it on the sidewalk?
Sure, I'm gonna hand that over to my colleague Brian Perrett, who can speak more about the station specifics.
Sure. Hi. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time. Yeah, the specifics on the station at 8th and 27th, that'll be on the sidewalk. It's a pretty small station, only about 21 docks. So it's really only going to take out about 60 feet. And it's a rather large sidewalk behind FIT's, I believe it's the Kimmelman Center. I might have that wrong though. But it's behind an FIT building near one of their loading docks.
So why don't you put it in the parking lane?
That's certainly something we could evaluate. We chose the roadbed for that specific location just because it was an extremely large sidewalk, and in that specific spot, it would preserve metered parking for loading.
Right, but you know, whenever you put something on the sidewalk, the people going to the lane, to the parking, or from the parking, ride on the sidewalk, and this is not something we want to encourage, especially because you are just across a large complex with a lot of seniors. So, as a rule, we are generally opposed to the sidewalk siting for all of those reasons.
Thanks, Christine. I think that's noted. And Brian, just to hop in, if I may, we have been coordinating with the FIT Intergov group because I know that there is upcoming construction. We're having these conversations with them just to ensure that there isn't an overlap with their plans for staging along 8th Avenue. But as Brian said, we could potentially look at, whether the roadbed adjacent to the site is feasible. But we did identify this location because it was quite a rather wide,
but what everybody's missing is wide is not just the thing, is that, once you have that, you have people riding on the sidewalk to get to the station. And that's not something we want to encourage. And we have generally in our neighborhood, we have put always the parking in the parking lane. We don't need so much parking, especially on the back of that area. There is no need for parking and deliveries. So we really, really, really would like very, 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 very much to put that station in the street bed.
That's something we'll evaluate for sure.
Yeah, I think especially since we've seen with COVID, we've seen less compliance rather than more compliance when it comes to sidewalk riding.
And
Janine,
and by the way, a lot of what we didn't used to see before, a lot of city bikes on the sidewalk, which is really upsetting. So the bottom line is we don't want it on the sidewalk, right? This is not.
Janine, I see committee members with their hands raised. Do you see them in the order that they raised them?
It shows up that way, Dale.
Yes, I believe it's David, Sarah, Jeffrey, and Brett.
Oh, I see. It's just, I gotcha. Okay, David's up next.
Hi, I agree with Christine with that, but first of all, thank you all for coming and being here. I have twofold question. One is, we need more electric bikes, so hopefully you'll be getting more of the electric bikes. And I think it's great that you're putting these in the area, especially if you put them in the street. But the thing is, if someone's going to commute, let's say they work in the area, but they're commuting from Coney Island, these city bikes are useless. You still have. That means if you want to avoid COVID, and you don't want to go on a subway, you're going to bring in your private motor car. What is your plan for building city bikes out in Coney Island? Because I mean, it's just for us in Manhattan and just parts of Brooklyn and a neighborhood here and there thrown in. What's your connectivity plan and like if I'm going to bike from Coney Island to my office or to my work, I need electric bikes. So I mean, what's going on with all that?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So first on the electric bikes, so Lyft is continuing to add new electric bikes to the fleet. Of course, they can go anywhere in the service area, but we're seeing more and more every week. And to the point about the expansion, so right now we have our phase 3 expansion, which will bring us to about half of the city's population will be within the city, the service area. Of course, we will not be getting all the way to Coney Island with this expansion, but I think, our long-term goal is to provide alternative transportation options for all New Yorkers, and something that we're certainly thinking about, how can we reach more people and provide more transportation options, particularly in the time of COVID as possible. But it's a great point. It's something we're constantly thinking about.
I think because of COVID, you should really reconsider that and hasten your plan for expansions on both, even if we have to get subsidies from the city or something else, because this is the time where we've got to really move on this. It's not like normal times.
Thanks.
I hope you consider that, or tell your bosses.
Thanks, David. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is from Sarah. And by the way, I just want to mention we have a couple of new committee members who have joined us, or who have recently joined us. Viren and Colin are here as well. Did I miss anyone else on the committee? No. Okay, so Sarah.
Thanks, I'll be brief. Lily, everyone, thanks for the presentation. Just wanted to quickly reiterate what Christine said and being opposed to it on the sidewalk, but also just wanted to offer like a rider perspective. So I love City Bike, I'm a frequent rider. But not only do I think that, having docks on the sidewalk is dangerous for pedestrians, it's actually a pretty bad rider experience. I don't know if you've heard this in other feedback channels, but for the exact reason that you're either having to dangerously navigate through pedestrians, or I have to actually get off my bike and walk it, usually like halfway through a block, which is a real pain. So just wanted to also offer that perspective.
Thanks, Sarah. Next up is Jeffrey.
Just 2 points. I hope that the committee adopts a letter to fundamentally always oppose any taking of sidewalk space for the purposes of another mode of transit besides people on feet. We have lots of roadway that needs to be repurposed and reoriented. And as you've heard from other members, this needs to be prioritized. Not only is it illegal to ride a bike on a sidewalk, putting a city bike dock on there prioritizes it. Jennifer, I know you've heard me mention this before because we've talked about it in my professional cap with Gansevoort Street issues and having a sidewalk station there. But this is significant given the fact that when the city begins to bustle again, our sidewalk space will be precious and we need to prioritize people as much as possible in terms of their feet. And then bikes, and then very small space leave for cars. Separate from that, I guess I just wonder what informed the placement, and if I missed that, I apologize. I did walk off for a second. What informed the placement decision?
For these specific stations, we were looking at where we had some network gaps and really just like the available space where we could fit stations. I mean, as we mentioned, like Infill is looking to cram more City Bike into an area that's already quite dense with City Bike. We did look at our feedback portal to see what kind of comments we had received about placement, but generally, like we were looking at where we had some decent network gaps and where we felt like stations would really address demand.
Okay, thank you. I'm really excited about it, by the way, but pedestrians first.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Can I ask committee members who are not speaking to please go on mute? We're having some interference. And I'll next recognize Brett.
Thank you. So while we've got all these docks going on the street, and that this is really a partnership between the city and Citibank, it's not just about City Bike, it should be about a public amenity. So right now we know it's not just that ridership for City Bike is up, we also know that bike ownership, especially around here, is up. And you just try to go to a bike store and buy one, you'll see the market has driven all the prices up. As I'm biking around a lot more this summer especially, but just in general, getting to a grocery store, running errands, one of the big challenges that we have biking around within the city, not just going to the more enjoyable bike passes, finding a place to lock your bike up. One thing I would be very interested in seeing DOT implementing with this expansion of the city bike program is taking another look at the bike stations and seeing if there's an opportunity that while we're in the street, which is a great place to park bicycles, to incorporate free bike parking racks for non-city bikes. So that way riders that are doing one better than City Bike, which is owning our own bicycles and maintaining them ourselves, will also be part of the amenities that are happening to us. Has there been any thoughts or discussion towards incorporating non-City Bike parking stations once we're already going in and taking these parking spaces for bike parking?
Brett, thanks so much for that question. It's a good one, and it's something that the agency has certainly been discussing. You know that we have city racks, right, which are the hoop racks, as well as we have our bike corrals, which are typically sleds that host like 4 to 6 of like the U racks. And we have been talking about potentially installing these types of bike facilities alongside city bike stations, or coming up with some other creative solution to, like you said already, just firm up that roadway space for cyclists as well. So we'll keep you posted on our plans, but that certainly is an interesting and great idea, and something that we've been talking about internally as well.
Dale, you're on mute.
Sorry, back to Christine. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, I thought about the second question. When you did your expansion, I mean, have you mapped your extension over the profile of poverty and racial profile of the city? Like, you know, East New York, what neighborhoods which are really underserved are going to be served by this expansion?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think something that we have been looking at with renewed eyes over the past several months. So one thing that we've seen in the past is that for the system to operate successfully, it has to be contiguous. So we don't want to create an island of service in a place that's not connected to the rest of the system, that will not work for riders and also not work operationally. Which of course creates this tension of we wanting to serve riders in low-income communities and communities of color and wanting to reach them as quickly as possible while going through this sort of arduous, slow expansion process. We are, as we expand, looking to conduct as thorough outreach and engagement in the neighborhoods we're reaching. So this year we reached, we're in the South Bronx for the first time. And in addition to making sure that we're doing our due diligence in our planning process and providing a service just as good as the one we've been providing in Manhattan, also making sure that we're doing outreach and education around our low-income programs. We have partnerships that provide discounted memberships to NYCHA residents and SNAP recipients, and wanting to make sure folks know that those are available, and also just doing cycling education so that people understand this is a system that works for me. I can use Citi Bike, I can use my own bike, these are the rules of the road, all those kinds of things. So we're looking, I think, at trying to figure out how to maximize those opportunities, how to expand even to folks who are low income but are not NYCHA residents or SNAP recipients, and strengthening our partnerships with local community groups and local cycling groups that are already entrenched in their neighborhoods and understand the needs of their constituents. But thank you for that point in question.
All right, and now I see David. I see you, Pete. I'm going to go to David first. David Solnick.
Yeah, I would just kind of like to follow up on Brett's suggestion about putting bike parking associated with these docking stations. I mean, for two reasons. One is, you know, sort of reiterating what Christine said, is when you put bike racks on sidewalks, you just send a message, independent of the width of the sidewalk, you send a message that bikes are permitted on sidewalks. But the other thing is the bike corrals, which are in the streets, are not going anywhere because DOT is requiring those to be maintained and insured by private businesses nearby. And, you know, few want to do that. And so if there was bike parking associated with the docks, presumably the maintenance and insurance would be connected with the docks and it wouldn't require private businesses to participate in this you know, citywide plan. So, you know, there's lots of good reasons why putting bike parking associated with the city bike docks would be a brilliant idea. And, you know, particularly considering that your current program for putting them in the street is not viable because of the way it's been established.
Thanks, David. I'll go to Pete and then Colin.
Thank you for the presentation. Let me see if I'm on mute. I'm on. Okay.
You're up. You're good.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the presentation. My question is regarding the braking mechanisms in the bikes. I had an individual complain to me or mention to me that the bikes were not stopping on time, especially when they pressed on the part that stops the bikes or makes an attempt to stop the bikes. I'm not sure if the braking mechanisms are functioning well. And I'd like to know how often these braking mechanisms are checked.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So all of the bikes are serviced. I think it's at least once a month. Brian might know more specifically. And then once a month. And then there's also a function if you experience any difficulty with the bike, if there's a problem with the brake, if there's a problem with the seat post adjuster, anything like that, when you dock the bike, there's the ability there's a little button that looks like a wrench on the dock. And you can press that button, which will take the bike out of service for other riders and also signal to the operations team that it needs to be looked at. So, hopefully I'm sorry to hear that's been an experience, and definitely encourage folks to hit that wrench button if they are experiencing that problem. And if it's something, a more sustained issue, certainly something we can talk to the operational team about as well.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Colin and then Viren.
Yeah, thanks so much for the presentation and for the work that you guys are doing. I'll keep my remarks brief. I do want to echo the previous comments about, the preference in this community, and at least in this committee and this community board, would be to take space from cars instead of pedestrians when it comes to placement of racks or docks. I saw today on Twitter a mayor's management report graphic that showed that fiscal year 2020 was the lowest year for installation of new city racks since 2010, 2009 to 2010, that fiscal year, which is disappointing given that there's so much, of course, we've seen such a bike boom over the past 7 months at least. So just to echo those two comments, my question is a little afield. I don't know if you guys can answer this tonight, but I'd be interested in speaking. Sorry, my new puppy is making some noise in the background, but I'd be interested to speak with anybody about any service change, any changes in patterns, travel patterns that y'all have seen overnight in the 1 to 5 a.m. hours while the subway has been closed, particularly, whether any city bike trips or whether people who are, in lower income communities and nature communities, essential workers, whether they have strong access to city bike during those hours. I'd like to, if you've seen any interesting, travel patterns that you can talk about tonight, that'd be great. Or else I can get somebody's contact information and speak to you after.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to look into it and talk about it further.
Great. Thanks, Lily. So we'll go ahead and follow up with some additional data and details on that question, Colin. But to the second question, or I guess your second point about city rack installations over the last year, I will say that COVID definitely put a halt, as one would guess, to a lot of our non-essential work for some time. But our public space unit has been working on our bike recovery plan to essentially kind of cover areas citywide where we are installing additional bike parking facilities and capacity to help with this increased demand in cycling.
Thanks for that question, Colin. That's interesting. Viren.
Just a couple of quick questions, echoing everyone else's concerns. I'm just going to add a couple of items. Lily did mention discounted bike passes for NYCHA residents. Do you have a kind of comprehensive plan for working in conjunction with, there are 347 locations that NYCHA owns throughout 5 boroughs. So is there any kind of comprehensive plan for within your expansion plan? That's question number 1. And along the same token, are there any sort of programs that City Bikes has with public schools?
Yeah, great question. So within the service area, we have a policy of placing at least one city bike station at each NYCHA facility. Of course, there's some very large NYCHA facilities where we have multiple, but it's our policy to make sure we have at least one at every NYCHA facility in the service area. And we have partnerships with NYCHA. So when we're doing our outreach and our planning, we go to tenant association meetings and things like that. To the question about schools, we have a number of, so city bikes, you have to be at least 16 to ride a city bike. So that's one factor for for school age kids riding. We have a number of programs with Lyft, one of which is called Partner Keys, where we provide access to Citi Bike at schools or other community groups, maybe like a YMCA, something like that, where they can organize rides and then provide free rides for the participants. So often that will include young people. We also have a program called Citi Bike for Youth, or Lift Up, which is a partnership with the YMCA and LeBron James to provide I think it's free or discounted memberships to riders between the ages of 16 and 24.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran. I think if there are no more questions or comments from the committee.
Follow-up.
Go ahead, Christine.
Follow up on the school, really great question. This is, I mean, do you have a systematic, like you are saying, we at least put a station for each NYCHA. Do you put a station on each school street?
That's a good question. I don't think we have as sort of hard a policy around schools as we do around NYCHAs. With the way we plan the system, we aim to have a very high density of stations per square mile. And so you're always within a 3 to 5 minute walk of a station within the service area. But in terms of specifically placing them near schools, it kind of depends on the relationship with the school itself. And often schools have a lot of different operational needs that can limit the feasibility of putting stations. So there's loading and docking and teacher parking, things like that. But as much as possible, yes, I think we look to place stations near schools and any really large amenity. So school, museum, shopping plaza, anywhere where there's going to be a lot of activity and people coming to or from, we want to have a station there.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to go to Carl Wilson from Speaker Johnson's office, and then we have at least 2 questions from public. Carl?
Hi, everyone. Evening, DOT and MCB4. Just quick question. Any of the sites that identified, do they disrupt any current outdoor dining setups? And, how is that taken into consideration now when selecting sites for new racks?
Hi, Carl. Good evening. I'll let Brian, I see he unmuted, so please go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, none of these sites would conflict with open restaurants or outdoor dining setups. It was certainly a consideration we looked into when we cited these sites, and we'll frankly continue to look into as outdoor dining is becoming a more permanent fixture in New York City.
Yeah, another wrinkle. Okay, I'm going to Alan. Thank you.
Another wrinkle, Dale, and reason to take up more space from cars for cyclists. Anyway, sorry.
I'm going to go to Alan Oster. Alan, I can read out your question if.
Hello.
Yes.
Here he is.
Hi. Several of these racks, and thank you for expanding the one on West 22nd Street. Better to have the racks there than the cars, even though some folks on the block were a little upset that they saw so many bikes, but thank you very much. I think it went from 40 to 70 or 72 or something like that.
Wow.
But unfortunately, a lot of the bike riders seem to feel that the racks are a place to leave their coffee cups, uneaten lunches, all of that stuff gets left behind. Where we are, there's a parks department right next to the park. The parks department does its best to keep the sidewalks clean. We have members on our block that clean around the bike racks, but parks department shouldn't be cleaning the bike racks. Is Citi Bike required? I know they used to come around and spray down the bikes once in a while. I haven't seen that happen in a long time. And then there are other areas in our location, 20th Street between 10th and 11th is a large bike rack where there's no one there to really clean up around the racks. And I'm sure there are other areas also. And on your presentation, page 11, I think, showed the racks, one in the sidewalk and one in the street. with some debris around it. So why isn't City Bike required to come around on a regular basis to clean around these bikes? Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you for the question, and specifically the comments on those two locations. I'll take those back to Lyft and ask them to have them addressed. City Bike is required to clean the racks twice a month. So that is like the power washing that you're familiar with. But yes, with these two spots, I can definitely ask them to take a second look. I think with COVID, our internal inspection system is maybe not as robust as it used to be. So DOT is missing these locations and would normally ask Lyft to address them more promptly. But yes, twice a month in these two locations, we can definitely have them take a second look at.
If I could just follow up on that. I assume there's a license agreement, there's a some sort of agreement where they have responsibilities. Is there a lease or something, or is there an agreement coming due that we could have them, instead of just hosing down the bikes, that they're required to come not twice a month, but once a week? We clean the bike rack at least once a week, if not more, because it happens to be a very heavy location, gets a lot of. Why not have them put garbage cans out there? They can put their phone number and an emblem on these things. And perhaps we can get the block associations to coordinate. We'll empty the cans and put a black bag in. So the garbage is really starting to really accumulate. And personally, I'm getting tired of cleaning up for a company that is hopefully making money on this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. But so let's see what we can do. I think maybe getting garbage cans would be a good step, but let's see. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Roberta, can you go live, or else I can read out your question? Roberta?
Yep, got it.
Okay,
so
thanks.
I'm very concerned with enforcement and how enforcement will be modified for adding these new bikes. It has become more and more dangerous for pedestrians, especially elderly people, to get their, bikes are on the sidewalk more and more often. It's not so much city bikes, although I've seen those. I mean, I had a neighbor sent a note on Facebook that she was caught in a crosswalk the other day when a group suddenly appeared. It was a group that were, it was a protest group, but they were all on bikes. And finally, she was standing in the middle of this. She couldn't move. There were hundreds of bikes. There were 3 cops on scooters who just did nothing. And finally, a guide came to her rescue and helped her out of that and get to the sidewalk. I mean, she's elderly, and she could have easily been killed or badly hurt. And I've seen that every day. I can tell you, when I'm walking the dog, there are bikes on the sidewalk. And other than screaming at these people, I don't know what we can do. But if you're adding all these bikes, I'd really like to know how you're going to enhance enforcement so that the streets are safe, so that pedestrians and other cyclists, I mean, the cyclists who are abiding by all the rules are in as much danger as the pedestrians.
Thanks for your question, Roberta.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think as we're seeing this well, first of all, the rules of the road are on every single city bike on the handlebars. So all riders are reminded of them. Second of all, I think, as we are experiencing this big bike boom, we're seeing a lot of people who have not ridden in the city before and are perhaps less familiar with the rules of the road. So I think it's a reminder that in addition to enforcement, that we need to have a renewed sense of education. We have a lot of some of our typical education components, like on-street teams and going to schools, going to different businesses to educate people on how to safely ride a bike and what the rules of the road are. A lot of those have been we've had to change our operations for them due to COVID. So I think it's a great reminder, not only about the need for enforcement, but also the need for education. And, you know, I think the as well as looking to place stations in the street as much as possible, which we appreciate your support with. Not every area is as supportive as taking roadway space for city bikes. So it's something that we're also contending with in other areas as well.
Can I ask a follow-up to Roberta's question? Does your mobile interface have like basic instructions for riders on riding safely in New York? Or should it?
The Citi Bike app?
Yeah.
I believe it does. And I know that there's been some renewed conversations around rider training and having folks go through a quick demonstration or a quick set of slides on their phone about rider safety and rules of the road, but something we can look into.
Yeah, I'm just looking now and I don't see anything especially vivid or robust on the interface. And I think that would be a good place to get some basics down for visitors. I think I see also Brian Weber has his hand up. Brian?
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
A little louder.
Hello?
Yes, better.
Okay, great. Hi, I tuned in a little bit late, but Brian Weber, public member, a resident of West 36th Street, and the co-chair of the very nascent 36th Street Block Association. I just wanted to thank Citi Bike for reinstalling the rack on 36th Street and 9th Avenue. Didn't know that it was coming back, but residents are very glad to see it. It reduces the number of cars that double park on that corner next to other cars. Now we just have cars double parking next to Citi Bikes, which is a little bit more tolerant. And we're going through some rough times on 36 due to other reasons. So we really appreciate your return. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I see one more attendee who's got his hand up or their hand up. It's I see them identified as diagnostic in the interface.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it's Susan Numeroff. How are you today?
Hi, Susan.
Everyone. Hey, thank you all for being here, and you've been doing such a great job through the pandemic, and I really appreciate it. I have a couple of questions. I'll sort of piggyback on Alan. Is how we can get information to the block associations when things change, additions, subtractions, etc., would be really greatly appreciated. The bike racks on the that are proposed, are they proposed on streets that have bike lanes? And for instance, the bike lane on 22nd, the bike rack on 22nd Street, which was expanded to 70. And we do have a lot of residents that are unhappy with it, does not have a bike lane, which then creates major chaos. So we've got bikes coming on sidewalks on 10th Avenue. We've got bikes coming up 9th Avenue in the wrong direction. So it's an accident one day ready to happen. I've taken a couple of videos of it. I'd really like to understand how we got to 70, and maybe we need a bike lane on 22nd Street if we're going to have this major investment of bikes on that lane, on that street. Otherwise, maybe to shorten it and put bike lanes on 20th Street and 21st Street. There seems to be a lack of enough bike lanes on those other streets that do have bike lanes. We've got to support our bikers. We're setting them up for failure and possible injury when we don't have enough lanes. So that's my other question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can answer, at least I know 54th, where we proposed the station, and I think 44th have bike lanes, though they are just standard bike lanes, not protected or any kind of enhanced infrastructure.
We don't call that bike lanes. We call that paint.
Yes. there is paint. That's
There's
Jennifer, do you have anything?
Of course, thanks, Brian. And so, Susan, just to speak a little bit more to, you know, your request or suggestion of adding in a bike lane on 22nd, 20th Street. I saw Jeffrey clapping at that suggestion as well. You know, of course, DOT is willing to look at, you know, those types of requests and proposals should the board bring us a formal request. So I'll put that out there. I think Christine and Dale already know that. So thanks for your support of bike infrastructure across the city.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Jennifer. I see no more hands up. I think we have fairly exhausted this subject and we need to move on to some other topics on the
I'm
agenda.
happy to make a motion. I'm happy to make a motion, Dale.
Yes, go ahead, Jeffrey.
That the board applauds and welcomes the infill in CB4, but would like the 27th and 8th Avenue Street sites to be reconsidered and placed on the roadbed and not the sidewalk.
And then I have some addition to that. I heard that we also want to ask for parking adjacent to the stations.
That's right. Parking for non-city bike docks.
Non-city bike
racks.
And then we ask for more regular cleaning of the stations, you know, at least once a week, and enforcement of enforcement/education, as we usually ask.
Do I hear a second on this motion?
Seconded.
Okay.
Okay, so all in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any noes or any abstentions? Okay, great. Thank you so much
We
to
have a
all.
hand raised here. Melanie Bryan. Oh no, this is Melody as a raised hand. Did you miss that, or did we miss that?
I just saw it. Melody, did you have a comment on this topic or?
Yes, am I audible?
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to add, this is also great. I just wanted to add that West 22nd also has a pretty significant station on 8th Avenue West, going from 8th to 9th. And it's been expanded a lot. So even paint would be great there. Bike lane would be even better. I have an open street between 7th and 8th. And anything would potentially remove parking would be welcome.
Great, thanks, Melody. Okay, we've voted on the motion. We're going to move on to the next subject. I believe we have a presentation from our friends at the EDC on the Pier 79 ferry expansion. Is that correct?
And thank you to DOT for their presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you once again. Appreciate it.
I didn't get a presentation from EDC to put up, but if you have one available, I can please send it to me and I'll put it up quickly.
Oh, give me 1 second. I thought we sent that over to you. Give me 1 second and I will send it over to you now. But first we can start with some introductions and then we can move from there.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Sure, and if you could also introduce yourself and your team.
But hi, my name is Ratty. I'm with Corporation, and I'm here with, and I'm with the Government Community Relations team here. I'm joined today by Janine. I think James Wong just sent it to you.
I think James Wong would like to be made a presenter.
If he's also added to as a panelist, that would be helpful since he will also be.
Yeah, I'll send them over.
Awesome, thank you. But I'll turn on the camera briefly. But I'm Ratty. I'm with the Economic Development Corporation. Good to see a lot of you all again. I know it's been a difficult 7 months and we haven't connected. Well, some of us haven't connected since pre-COVID. So good to see you all and good to see you're in good health. That said, so I do government community relations work. I know some of you sometimes deal with Will Fisher, who covers the Manhattan side. I cover the transportation side. And today I'm joined by James Wong, who is the head of our ferry system, but I'll let him say hi and maybe a few words first.
Hey, hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having us. I have a couple of slides, some of which I believe a couple of folks have seen before. I do know that we had a couple of specific questions, which I've included towards the end of this, that were questions mostly related to access to Pier 79 in sort of access mode. So I'll speak to those in the last slide of this presentation. So if we go to the next slide, it should just take maybe 5-10 minutes. So I'll provide a little background just again for everyone with 2 slides and also an update on where things are, how we've been reacting with COVID. We'll talk a little bit on the expansion update, specifically how it affects, we'll talk about everything, but also the specifics of where we are for service that will be starting at Pier 79 next year. And then, as I had mentioned, speaking kind of directly to some of the 3 questions that were provided to us in advance as they relate to access considerations. So as I've mentioned in the past, for I believe it was the larger community board, so NYC Ferry, just for everyone's awareness, is a system operating with 150 and 350 passenger ferries throughout the city. We have 7-day year-round service that does fluctuate with the seasons, but which has consistent peak service throughout the year. Our general operations are roughly from 6 to 10:30 p.m. with a few specific areas where we do start a little earlier for some of our further out routes. And depending on the different route, peak service headways are anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes. And that has a lot to do with the ridership demand that we see on each different route. We are matching the subway fare, which is an important element as part of NYC Ferry, and it has been $2.75 since we've opened. And we are on a separate ticketing system from MTA, so there is no free transfer. However, we do have our own mobile ticketing and real-time service alerts available through the NYC Ferry app. What you're seeing on the right here is our current system, which actually has had a number of small changes since we launched and reflecting some of the changes that we've made during COVID, including the reconfiguration of the Lower East Side route and changes to the Astoria route as well. Slide. So in response to COVID, we, of course, like all agency, require masks on board, and they must remain on board while they are there, while people are there, even on the top deck. In general, riding myself pretty frequently, I do notice that we have pretty good mask compliance around the system, which feels pretty good. We have limited capacity on board to accommodate the ability to create social distancing, so to allow people to stand or small groups to stand 6 feet apart from one another. All ticketing has to happen in advance, and so you do need to use the app or a ticketing machine, and we have seen increases in usage in the app. And of course, frequent cleaning and hand sanitizer available on board all vessels. One of the things that's not written here, but which is exciting, is that we are seeing a strong return in our ridership. So we have seen a steady increase, and recently as high as 60 to 70% of ridership from last year is actually riding now, something that shows us that our recovery for our slice of the ridership of the transportation modes in New York City is starting to see that recovery. And so we're excited to see those numbers come back. We're keeping a close eye, certainly as we go into fall and cooler weather, to make sure that at least proportionally we're seeing the same levels and trying to get people on board and moving to help support the city. Slide. So to talk a little bit about the 2021 expansion. So of course, as you know, the route that will be serving Midtown West, Pier 79, is the St. George route. This route connects from St. George and Staten Island to Battery Park City and also to Midtown West. So it makes those 3 stops. We will also be expanding to Coney Island with a new route that serves Coney Island and picks up Bay Ridge from the South Brooklyn route. And of course, we also have the Throgs Neck expansion on the Soundview route, which will add a small trip over the water there, but will actually provide a lot of benefits to people who are living up in the Throgs Neck neighborhoods. Yes, next slide. So just to give folks some scale as to where we are, what has transpired over the last several years. So we announced in 2015 that we were going to be doing this and opened in 2017 with the launch with several routes. The full original system was completed in 2018, which is also when we started an expansion feasibility study and began community consultations at the time, including broad invitations to elected officials, community boards, and the public about requests for sites. In 2019, we released our planning study and also began an environmental review with the announcements of new routes that we're going to implement. And that environmental review did wrap up in August of this year. So things are moving along. The draft EIS came out in January. There were comments that worked. We had an original date that got extended so that we could accommodate some of the additional time needed, of course, due to COVID. And ultimately, the final EIS was completed and released in August of this year. In terms of infrastructure and launch, we're in the permitting phase, so we are now working on getting our permits organized. And I apologize, there's a typo here, but it should be that construction at St. George, which is the only new landing for this route, is expected to start in early 2021. Our goal is to launch the St. George route in summer of 2021. So that is something that we are still on track to do. We look forward to starting soon. Next slide. So, of course, there's the part of the 2021 expansion, and as it relates to Pier 79, of course, the areas within CB4. So this is an existing ferry terminal, mainly serving New Jersey and Manhattan-based trips, so the cross-river trips on the Hudson. This would be new service that's added to an existing landing with no new construction that's involved locally. So we'll be using the existing ferry terminal. It is located, with Hudson River Park adjacent and adjacent to the West Side Highway at West 39th Street. Our plan is to have service in the peak approximately with 2 to 3 landings per hour. So this is not service every 5-7 minutes. It's service every 25 to 35 minutes, depending on the season for peak. Off-peak periods will also have lower service as it goes, like I've mentioned, by season. NYC Ferry vessels do have some differences compared to some of the other vessels that are more common on the Hudson River. So we do have newer vessels. Everything was purpose-built for NYC Ferry, meaning that we do have lower emissions, quieter vessels, a more stable ride, which is generally noticeable when you're on some of the longer haul routes. And also one of the things that we think is important is that we're also creating less wake than some of the older vessels, just because technology has improved and designs have improved on catamaran style vessels in the harbor. Next slide, please. So the 3 things that were brought up in the questions that were sent to us were kind of about key access modes, M42, SBS, and coordination with the existing operations. So first of all, I'm very aware and know that there's been longstanding challenges with access modes at Pier 79 as it relates to the bus system that Waterway has. And I've been talking to them about it because we are a pretty small player in this world in terms of the total amount of service and the total amount of ridership. So they are definitely the incumbent, and we have to work with them to see if there's anything that's going to happen in the future. And I do think there are some opportunities there. But in terms of what we expect, so first of all, there are changes to travel behavior that are working in our favor. And by in our favor, I mean that Waterway has shared that the proportion of ridership that is utilizing the shuttle buses is down from 95% to far less than half. I don't have the exact numbers, but they said far fewer people are using the shuttle bus to access the Pier 79 area, either to or from the landing, which from a local perspective is good information, because that means that fewer people are creating demand for those buses to come back to a full system. Right now, Waterway is operating, I think it's about 15 or 20% of the normal buses that it operates in terms of frequency at Pier 79. So those changes are good. They're a good indicator for us because in general, most of our riders walk and bike to landings, a high percentage of them. And we hope to see something similar here, and with people using it for local destinations, that is a good thing for us. That said, we do intend to make shuttle buses available to our ridership. Previously, we've said that we intended to either start our own shuttle bus system or to leverage the one that's already there. Right now, we are still negotiating, but planning to leverage the existing shuttle buses so that we do not have to increase or add any new bus service to this area. Understanding the constraints that are already there, we're trying to avoid any adding or exacerbating the issues that exist. In terms of, and then of course, there will continue to be the existing walk, bike, city bike just north, and other pickup and drop off access modes for taxis, Ubers, and other things that are available. I personally haven't been over to Pier 79 in the last couple of weeks, but I did hear also from some of the operations folks there that they've also not seen a dramatic increase in the Uber and Lyft pickup area, which is also promising, again, towards the how are people getting to and from the landing. In terms of M42 SBS, so of course, the M42 is a straight shot across 42nd Street and terminates two blocks north of the Pier 79 area. There had been some question as to what are we doing with it, which I wasn't actually completely sure I understand the full breadth of the question. In terms of rerouting or sort of changing the routing of the bus route, that's a little bit outside of the immediate scope of what we're doing. However, if there is an active request or a process that's underway related to sort of changing where the MTA is taking that bus route, we would of course be welcome to or happy to talk about that or have a conversation as to whether or not we would be actively advocating for that as well. If there's something else that I'm missing in terms of, you know, what does it mean with respect to M42 SBS and how it relates to Pier 79, I thought we should just have a quick discussion if there was something more specific. Finally, in terms of existing buses and operations coordination, so I do have an ongoing conversation that's been happening with the trust, with Waterway, having some conversations with City DOT. I certainly have learned that there is as many bureaucratic things are, a very complex ownership pattern that involves the state, city, trust, EDC, and Waterways interests all collaborating in the area immediately in front of Pier 79. So of course, with something that is that complex, it's no surprise that there's been a lot of challenges in sort of moving things. That said, having spoken to Waterway and encouraging them that while we are interested in working with them, we're also interested in making sure that they're being good stewards of the area and keeping the promises that they've made. I understand that they had previously committed to, and this was, it sounds like at the beginning of this year, maybe late last year, that they had committed to working with the trust for putting traffic flag people at the intersections during peak times for the calendar 2020 year and going forward. Of course, COVID happened, they're a private enterprise and they're hurting tremendously. And so that did not happen this year, in addition to having far fewer actual traffic movements. However, in speaking to them, they're still committed to doing so next year in sort of finding the times that it makes the most sense to bring traffic flag people and to put them at the two intersections that are needed. In terms of other operations, from what they've told me, and I'm of course happy to hear from others, it does sound like they have done their best to move certain operations and some of their pickup and drop off to pull things a little further down south because that had been part of some the earlier conversations with the trust. But that obviously looks very different in a COVID world than it does when things were at sort of peak service. And finally, you know, there was mention, and this is something that I do not fully have my arms around. As EDC, we are just the lease administrators at Pier 79. We are not the sort of core planning entity that's going to be creating long-term plans or visions for the area. That is a joint effort between, as I said, sort of the city, state, DOTs, and the trust, which all have interests in the area. But it does sound like there continues to be both an interest and a need for some long-term visioning in terms of how to recreate access points here, which is, you know, a longer and bigger capital planning process and project. So having spoken to Waterway again in presenting our interest in working with them, saying that we want to make sure that they're being good to the community, was a conversation that they're eager, if not, eager to participate in whatever public studies are happening. I don't believe at the moment there is an active capital planning process for this area, but did want to leave note that, from our perspective, we're happy to encourage Waterway to participate in that, to encourage and work with the city in any way we can, but also acknowledging that this is a pretty tricky area, just given the overlapping jurisdictions that do exist. So with that, I'd like to pause and go through questions. I know I jumped through that pretty quickly, so of course can go back to any areas that we need a little further discussion.
Great, thank you so much, James. That was very thorough, and I appreciate you digging into those questions. I'm going to turn first, of course, to Jeffrey LaFrancois, who is our resident West Side Ferry booster.
Mr. Chair, I believe it's Queen of the Ferries is the nickname, but
put a crown on it.
Thank you, Dale, and hi, James. Thank you for this, and thank you for addressing these questions specifically. Thrilled to see there's discussions happening with New York City Transit around the 42 connection. EDC is considering its own shuttle bus? Did I hear that correctly?
We were previously talking about, and the EIS considered that we would either start our own small circulator or leverage the existing buses that Waterway has. So we are still in negotiations, but we are reasonably confident that we are going to be using the existing Waterway shuttles so that we don't have to add new buses to the area.
I definitely think that we would be much more supportive of using existing buses.
Absolutely.
But would also use this moment to recognize that Waterways is actually in a bit of a violation of their lease, given the fact that they use the area for parking and layover, which has become a problem, in particular at nighttime.
And Jeffrey, I want to acknowledge that I know you said this from the beginning, which is we support use of existing ferries. As you can understand, for the sake of our public process, we cannot commit Waterways to doing anything without having real conversations and an agreement between the two. So that's why we had to have the two options there. But agree.
I'm thrilled to hear that.
Leverage.
This is new information to me, I think, unless I missed it last time. So I'm really happy to hear this. And we're happy to help, I think, push this along, because we're all about, streamlined multimodal node points, and this would do that. Agree with the flagpole factor, the flag people factor. Would that be something EDC is a part of encouraging? Or are you saying that's ongoing conversations between Waterway, the trust, and the city?
So the buses are, and the lease is Waterways. We are asking to participate a little bit in what they are doing. And so it is, from a strictly who's involved perspective, Waterway got buses, and the trust has been a pretty vocal supporter of trying to get people who are providing traffic flag people there. So it is sort of a conversation between them. As someone who is going to leverage our work with them, I am able to at least call their attention to this and ask what's going on, for which they've given pretty positive indications that, yes, they actually had intended to this year. Of course, COVID created both a decrease in usage and a financial hardship that they've been struggling with, but they are still committed to and in plan to for next year.
So, and this is my final question, who would EDC be signing a lease with?
EDC does not sign a lease with anybody.
Because
we would get a landing slot license, which is an administrative tool that allows us to pull into Pier 79.
Will any boat storage?
No.
Okay.
Our vessels are stored at our home ports in the East River.
Got it. Where you have all the stops too, I guess.
That's right. And the Ocean Queen Rockstar. There's more than one ferry queen.
There's several stops missing along this West Side route. As you know, this is a boon for Staten Islanders and a bit of a burden for CD4. So we look forward to stops as we've requested at other parts along the West Side in the future. I don't have any other questions, Dale. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thank you for the questions.
Thanks, James.
Christine?
Yeah, thank you for this good presentation. You mentioned at the beginning that a lot of people are not using the buses. So what are they using?
So that's a really good question. So because we don't have operations there, I'm not on the ground as of yet. I will be spending more time, obviously, once we get started. In my conversations with the people who are there on a more regular basis, what they've said is that, yes, of course, the total slice of people who are using the ferry and the terminal is much smaller. But what they are surprised by is that the proportion of those people using it is even smaller for bus access, meaning that since people who were using buses were generally going towards places further north, this is a lot of people from New Jersey were coming in and were willing to take that link and then take buses that go closer to the in the 50s. It makes us think that more people are willing to walk from Pier 79 because, as I said, they don't see this huge increase in Uber or shared rides. They think people are walking and biking to areas that are closer. That's like a very much a hypothesis. It is not a proven thing, but their decrease in bus ridership compared to their ferry ridership is what's giving them the sense that people are moving a lot more locally than they are going in and going,
So they have retained essentially the local customers and they have lost the faraway customers.
If the difference between local and far away is distributed on their bus routes, then yeah, I think that's
Okay.
what it sounds like.
And the bike station, the bike share station is located where?
It's on the immediate north end of the property. So when you come across on 39th Street, if you're looking at the water, it's on the right-hand side.
Okay. And there is a crosstown 39th Street bike lane being built as we speak. So that should increase the volume of users of the bike lane, of the bike option.
I did not know that. That's great news.
So you have crosstown now 38 and 39, 38 to come in and 39 to leave. And I think that should encourage that, and maybe a good signaling signage would be a good thing to do, to say you have a protected bike lane. So M42nd, I couldn't really understand what you were saying. Are you talking to MTA to try to get the terminal to move over or not?
No. What I was saying was I didn't fully understand. The question that was sent to us was, how are you coordinating with M42?
So I guess that's the question, is are you talking to them? Are you encouraging that? Are we moving in that direction?
Sure. Okay. So we talk to the MTA when we talk about coordination generally. The proximity of this is not, and because it's a terminal, we have not actively been advocating to move their terminal to Pier 79, where there's already active, bus issues as is. If there was a more specific request that maybe I'm not understanding, I'd be happy to,
Well, the more specific request is that, the M42nd is very clean energy, etc. The buses of the waterway are really ugly, polluting buses, and they are duplicates of the M42 because the M42 was not effective before. But the M42 has since then been converted to a semi-SBS, kind of the red carpet, bus. And so the performance is much better than it was before. So for those two reasons, I think there would be value in trying to move people to cross with the M42nd and reduce the number of buses which are going cross town as a shuttle instead of the M42nd. So I think that's something that we should pursue.
I think let me say what I think I'm hearing just to make sure that I've understood it. It sounds like you're saying that in order to leverage the M42 SBS for ferry riders, I think you're suggesting that the terminal be moved to be in front of Pier 79, displacing the buses, some of which go cross town, but many of which go in many directions not served by the.
I'm not saying displacing in addition to, I mean, I hope it would displace some of those additional buses, that's all.
Okay, so.
I'm not suggesting that you displace the other buses, but I think you offer an additional option.
Sure. So I guess on this one, what I would say is that, we're we're happy to help and be an advocate for something. This one is a little tricky, as I had mentioned, because the overlapping jurisdictions mean that this is actually not our call. This is not like our thing to push. It is really something that I do believe we would want to lobby MTA for, who would reach out and ask, does it make sense, operationally for them, given that it would have to increase the run times and the routes for them to make that loop. And then, something that we would think through and understand the impacts that it has, not only, to New York Waterway, but, how that would impact everything else. But we would be happy to, understand that. And if it's a movement that's going and requires advocacy, better understand that and
Okay.
talk through it.
All right. And then finally, do you have any work going on with HRPT? Maybe HRPT is there to discuss to improve this. I mean, I know that this area is one of those that was supposed to be funded for an improvement by the trust, a capital project. And
Sure.
it was supposed to be put in the queue of a number of improvement. But now that we have a new terminal, in a sense, is it an opportunity? Do we have an opportunity to move that work up and make this area a little more friendly and a little prettier than it is today?
I guess I'm going to defer to Rashi to speak to capital planning within the trust. As it relates to what I was saying earlier, is I have heard rumors of, there is a planning process. I have not been able to pin down or see if there's any active capital planning process for the area in front of Pier 79, whose jurisdiction is not the trust, but actually like a mix of a few different layers overlapped. And I think Noreen is here as well, who may be able
Maybe
to.
Dale, you can ask Noreen to respond to that.
Noreen?
Sure. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Noreen.
Rashi is basically on to talk about all things ferry, but that particular question, Christine, I can try to answer. Yes, the area from 29th to 44th Street is kind of the last big, not yet in process fully, planning zone for Hudson River Park, aside for our River Research and Education Center down in Tribeca. And it is in the queue. We have been working on an RFP for that area, which is pretty complicated given all of the transportation and other uses that have leases and lots of issues. And I'm sure it's an issue, when we finally get a designer on board for that area, it's something we're going to have to be talking with you all about, because I think it's probably a zone that would be addressed almost in phases, because there are more open space opportunities in some areas, and in some areas it's really more like enhanced vehicular passageways or pedestrian passageways. But basically the funding for this area is quasi-identified as city and state. Because of COVID and the city and state financial crises, we don't quite know yet for sure when we will have access to that funding. There are already a couple of big projects in the queue in this neck of the woods. It's obviously Pier 97, which we are still planning to start construction on next year, and further south at Gansevoort. Those areas are already basically finishing design, and we expect to be doing construction bidding. This area is not as far along, and we're still talking with the city and state about this. So I guess, Christine, that because there's no physical construction that's needed for this, it doesn't really change our equation for that part of our overall park project, other than the transportation issues that you're all engaged in talking about, and how to make them work as best they can, eliminate as many vehicles as possible, et cetera, while we are still working on trying to, improve the park physically in this zone. Did I answer your question?
Kind of, the best you could.
Yeah, best I can. COVID, it's a COVID-informed answer, I'm
Yes.
afraid.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'll go back on mute and away. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Noreen. Christine,
Okay.
it sounds like based on the James's response on the M42, it would be somewhat on us to advocate for those changes. What do you think so?
Yeah, I think so. What do you think, Jeffrey?
I agree.
Yeah.
One of the concerns, though, the more like we have to consider sort of encroachment on the park here, and are we going to encroach upon anything that could be otherwise park if we're going to transfer a terminal or a terminus for the 42? You know, is there a trade-off here? Is there, you know?
I think the trade-off is more going to be with the waterway buses than with the park. I mean, you know, if you had a 42 there, I think in this day and age, people would take that more than.
I mean, my preference is to eliminate the waterway buses entirely, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a couple more questions from our committee members. Viren.
Hi, James. Thank you. Thanks, Dale. It's a very quick question. There used to be a ferry, I might be totally wrong, but there used to be a ferry from West Harlem to Pier 79 historically. Are there any plans sort of for expansion northwards?
So there have been, the story of ferries in the city has, depending on which decade we're talking about, has been usually described as a series of fits and starts, where a lot of private entities tried to do a lot of different things. Some have worked, some more successful than others. And we really had this game changer 3 years ago once we got started with NYC Ferry. I know there was a brief service that I think it was Waterway briefly ran a service a couple years back trying to get people from a little further north. And so that might have, I don't know that it went as far as like Dyckman Street, or certainly didn't go up to Dyckman, but like I think 125th and something in between. I'm not super positive if that's the one you're talking about. Like historically, I'm sure there were different kinds. We find out we're replacing links all the time.
No, I'm talking about the one that you just mentioned, 125th Street.
Yeah, so that one I believe was like a private venture that they tried to make it work and it did not pan out. I think that was a couple years back. In general, some of the challenges we've seen with trips within Manhattan and specifically trips that are competing with pretty active subway lines is that it's hard to plan to attract ridership that's going in a north-south pattern given the number of subways that are doing, you know, pretty close to the same thing. And so making ferries competitive at scale has always been really challenging for us. This is definitely experimental in terms of making a connection on the west side between Lower Manhattan and Midtown. I know Waterway for different services has versions that do it through New Jersey. But really for us, as you guys know, I mean, a main draw for here is the connection between points in Manhattan and Staten Island.
Thank you, David. Warren.
Hi, thank you. Quick question. A few times I've been on the ferries, and I don't know which ones, but they've always charged extra for the bike, and bike parking's always been tenuous on the ferries. So will there be better bike storage, and possibly are they going to charge an extra fee or not charge an extra fee? Because, you know, if you want 8 o'clock. Oh, I guess that's a hint. But that's my questions, and I look forward to the ferries. Thank you.
Thanks. So yes, we do have a $1 surcharge for bikes. I'm asked this question a lot, and the very true answer is that it's a very double-edged sword. We have a system that needs to run on time, and bikes happen to be, because of how they are, interacting with the ferry themselves, they do take up physical space, and they do take a lot of time to board and unboard. So it is a weird challenge. I understand that I would love for it to be super easy to get bikes on and off to solve the first and last mile problem. The way we do generally work around this is by really encouraging and working with DOT to get city bike stations as close to the ferry landings as possible, working with DOT to get bike parking that are bike racks near the landings as well. And of course, for those who are bringing bikes on board, we're happy, we encourage them, but there is the $1 fee that is involved as part of it.
Thanks, David. Are there any further questions from committee members? Otherwise, I'm going to move to the public. I see Brian Weber, our public member has his hand up.
Hi, thank you, Dale.
Is there any future in which the West Side will be connected to the East Side in Brooklyn via ferry? You know, as a West Side resident, I don't have much use of getting to Staten Island as I do to getting to points east and points in Brooklyn and Queens for that matter. So why is the ferry going to Staten Island and only stopping in the one spot on the West Side?
Sure. So briefly, the why is that the travel, in order to be travel time competitive and to get into terminals where there's still ample capacity, it wasn't possible to make a stop both on the east side and continuing onto the west side, and to make its way up to the destinations that we wanted to in order to make it travel time competitive with both the Staten Island ferry and the existing one train and other options that are there. So that's the sort of, you know, whether that feels right or not, that is the sort of background as to why that is the way it is. In terms of what can happen in the future, hard to predict. I would say this, that ferry landings are naturally very intercompatible. They allow changes to happen. We've created a number of changes on the East River just in the last couple of months, and some that are coming up in the next few months. And you know, we started our expansion planning study, our feasibility study. It was basically a month after we finished launching all the original routes. So only to say that there's definitely a future, there's definitely changes that come out of these. At the moment, and for this expansion, we are committed to the routes that we've talked about and that we've put out in the public, and are building towards right now.
Thanks, James. I have another attendee. They're only identified as call-in user 5 with a hand up. Can you identify yourself? Hello. Or if you can't, you can put your question in the Q&A and we can read it out.
Here it is. We can't hear
Hi,
you.
can you make it your volume a little louder?
This area is not as far along, and we're still talking with the city and state about this. So I guess, Christine, you know, that because there's no physical construction that's needed.
This sounds like a recording of Noreen's comments previously.
Yeah, Noreen's gone, and this is for some reason.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just mute that call in user 5, I think.
Janine, can we? Okay.
Someone did ask in the chat, where is the ferry stop on 14th and 23rd Street? I'm not sure if they're talking about east or west side, but on the east side, we do have a stop at Corlear's Hook and Stuyvesant Cove. Stuyvesant Cove is at 19th Street and Avenue C. If there's one on the west side, forgive me.
The West Side Community Board, I think you know that.
The ones that the landings I have already built are the ones I can talk about. The ones I haven't, you'll have to forgive me.
We identified the appropriate piers on the west side when, you know, the time comes, so.
All right, well, I think we have no more hands up. So are we going towards a motion here, or are we just going to, you know, absorb this information and take it upon ourselves to move forward as we see fit? Is there a motion coming up?
Two things I would flag, Dale, sorry.
Yeah.
Is to encourage I think we need to figure out if we want to encourage the 42 to move. If that's the case, we want to encourage them to use the 42 and not the existing waterway ferries.
I think that's a discussion for us to have with MTA, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't think we need.
Just so I understand, Jeffrey. So the 42 is a paid service versus.
Yep.
And your thought process is that the 42 sits there more empty than some of the waterway buses? Is that what the thought process is, or is the spot where folks access the bus the real thing in question? I just want to make sure I'm pretty clear.
So Christine had the point about efficiency. Christine, was that?
The point was that the waterway bus was created because, first of all, the M42 was far away. And second, because crossing town on 42nd Street with the M42 was just a no starter, right? you could not go across the street. So this was resolving two specific problems. So now the M42 is very efficient across town. So that problem is gone away. And you know, and if we were going to move the terminal closer to the ferry terminal, then there would be no reason for people to use the waterway.
I guess I do want to just flag, and this is really
Right.
just as information purposes, not advocacy or as a position
Right.
for the city, but noting that the M42 SBS has a separate fare system from Waterway, and Waterway bakes into its pricing the fact that they are providing this last mile
Yeah,
service.
yeah.
Of course, there are, I totally understand, we wish their buses were cleaner, a little more efficient, or run differently or more efficiently, but just to acknowledge that there is that difference there.
Yeah, get it. So I don't know that we are in a position to push one way or another at this point on this project. And I don't know that I personally don't think we need to have a resolution. I think it's a good update and we can go from there.
Christine, I couldn't agree more. I think this was a fabulous update, and we can talk to MTA and other relevant partners.
Right.
Great. Thank you both for your presentation and your answers to our questions. And we're gonna take it to the next agenda item, which is Sidewalk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. For certainly, I know I feel like my internet is freezing, but thank you for having us. And Janine, thank you for all the community. And Jeffrey, we did receive your other letter, and we will be responding to that. Just need some time to actually get the information.
Thanks, Roddy.
I just want that it is in receipt, and we are working on it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And now on to sidewalk maintenance, which is a discussion which I believe Christine will lead.
Yeah, Janine, can you put up the document I sent you by email? Where is my sidewalk?
Give me 1 moment, let me pull it up.
Yeah. So so this is a reflection really about the way we have been going about doing our business in transportation, and some observation, and then I'd like to open it to a discussion. You know, over the last 15 years, this committee has been very successful in transforming the streets, one project at a time. And yet, after the last 6 months, I wonder why we still need to fight the same battles over and over again. And when I think about equity and entitlement as a street user, I wonder if we have the proper allocation of public space and public mind as others, and if our taxes are being used to address our needs as public users. So in terms of transportation, I think although the marketing has changed, I think the fundamentals have not. And I think New York City is still putting the people at the back of the bus. And I wanted to give you some of the examples I have identified. So from a standpoint of real estate, we don't have equity in real estate and space and time, which, you know, why is the space reserved to pedestrian a pittance when we are the largest street user? Why are the DOT engineers continuing to put driver's flow ahead of pedestrian safety? And I'm saying that because this week I had a discussion with an engineer at DOT, and they still told me that they needed to check whether there was enough space and flow for the cars. You know, why are the pedestrian restricted to the sidewalk and crosswalk when we have started to do open streets?
Make its way up to the destinations that we wanted.
And while we use the roadway requires permit and payments, except for parking, when so many private activities are permitted to encroach on the sidewalk with no permit and no cost. And although we support COVID-19, for small businesses, why would we let permanent open dining privatize the curb? So that's the first set of questions. The second set of questions is we have no equity in dollars or service level. Can you move up a little bit? Yeah. So the question I have is, why does the city not maintain the sidewalk, although it's being used by the largest group of taxpayers? Our tax go to pay for maintenance and car space. If the same space is converted from car use, which is parking, to pedestrian use, why would the city not insure or maintain it any longer? So this is like real discrimination, right? It's like the space is used for car and the city maintains it. The next day it's used for pedestrian, the city doesn't maintain it. If the same space goes from being used for car parking to bike parking, same thing. Why would the city refuse to insure and maintain it? Why has the DOT budget virtually no dollars for pedestrian? Most is dedicated for vehicle and roadways. Why are there so many signs for car and nearly none for pedestrians? Well, there are thousands of traffic agents, but nearly no pedestrian crossing agents. And there are so many parking agents regulating the parking lane, but nearly none to enforce obstruction or sidewalks. Okay, why is the city sweeping the roadway? They have all these machines to sweep the roadway, but not the sidewalk. Why is the city clearing the roadway for snow, but not the sidewalk for pedestrian? Why do they pile the snow at the curb and the stops and the corners, but not in the middle of the roadway? And why so much of the sanitation budget is dedicated to roadway and cars and not sidewalk and pedestrian? And then we have this third section, which is we don't have equity in access and rights. Can you move up a little bit? Right. So jaywalking is criminally punished, even the street design give no way to cross the street. If you have 25 cars and drivers to gather on the roadway, they don't have to ask for a permit. It's called congestion. But pedestrian and cyclists have to ask for a permit. And even on the sidewalk, pedestrians have to ask for a permit. When people chant in the street, it's demonstration. When cars scream and yell honk in the street, it's normal. And when marchers block in the street, they go to jail, but cars block the traffic and it's no problem. So when I put this whole picture together, I say, well, I mean, should we be trying to address that in a more fundamental way than, you know, winning one little corner at a time? What should we be doing? What should we be doing different that we have done in the last 15 years? And, you know, I don't have the answers. I mean, I just wanted to open the discussion for everybody to chime in and give their thoughts and see whether we could design a program we could go forward with to ask for different things. You can take it down, Janine.
Thank you, Christine, for that provocative brief. I see David and Viren have their hands up. David, Warren?
Hi, yes, thank you. Christine, I agree with you 100%. This is like marvelous. You and I, of course, are on the same page. I'd like to add something, unless it creates more confusion, then I'll withdraw it. And that is, on the sidewalks, the permit for scaffolding is so it's so broad that you pay a small amount for a permit. It can be there for years. My building on 34th Street, I think has had the scaffolding there for 5 years, and I don't see it at any time soon where they're removing it. I've actually asked the managing agent, and he's just,
Okay,
you know,
that's a good
stuck
one.
his middle finger at me. I mean, not literally, but I mean, you know. So I mean, that's I think also we could deal with the maybe we can get higher prices for the permits, which would help the city maintain the sidewalks and give it a finite time. And if they don't comply with that finite time, they even get a more increased fee.
David,
I'd like to make that as a friendly amendment.
David, I think that's a good example of how pedestrian space is just neglected or overlooked in these instances. And I agree, it should be a part of this discussion. Viren.
Hi, Christine. Thanks for that. And Dave, I have a lot of things to say about this. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to write to both of you, and then we probably can take it up as a further conversation next time around. But fundamental issue that I have is irrespective of many sort of problems that we have about sidewalks, if you look at it, historically, there has been totally uneven distribution of street space between the pedestrians and the cars. 27% of New York City's roadways are cars, pretty much. But it's for a very small percentage of the population because car ownership, as we know, is much lower in Manhattan and other parts of the city compared to outer boroughs and suburbs. So I think now with COVID-19 situation, claiming part of the parking lane for expansion of sidewalks could be one of the sort of fundamental issues that we can raise with the city. And maybe there is a sort of, little more positive receptivity as far as that is concerned. So that's one of the biggest problems that I see. The other part is obviously everything that Christine talked about, decriminalizing pedestrian behavior, equitable sort of proportionate sort of investment from the city, not only for maintenance of the sidewalk, but improving the quality of sidewalks. The sidewalks are, I don't know, it goes back to 19th century, so to speak, especially in Chelsea zone, where in some places you have only 2 feet or 3 feet wide sidewalks, let alone the sort of quality of the sidewalk itself. So I don't want to take up all the time for of this meeting, but I have a whole list of items that I would be happy to email to the co-chairs.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Viren. David Solnick.
Yeah, I just want to say what a brilliant list that was. I mean, yeah, we work on this piecemeal, but Christine, you've put it all in one place, and when you do that, now that you've done that, it's extremely powerful. Mm. And I really think the document itself needs to get legs. First of all, because big legs, New York Times legs, right? An editorial of the New York Times, and I'm not even sure the best way to do it, but that just by putting it all in one place, and the way you've categorized it, it's a very powerful argument, and I think we need to do this beyond the CB4. This is not obviously these are not local community board issues. They're citywide issues, and so maybe even this may not even be the correct forum for that.
I mean, I absolutely agree with that, David. I also like the idea that the impacts of this built-in inequity are very evident in our neighborhood despite our efforts, but then they can be pointed to as an example of the wider inequities that's happening citywide. How we keep ourselves, local and then go beyond the borders of our district, I think is an important discussion in this. I see, Colin, did you have your hand up, or you no more? Brett?
All right, yeah, I mean, there's like a lot that could be said on this. I can, if I had the time, I'd go build a little soapbox and stand on it, but you guys don't have the time after I finished it. So,
it's cute.
So I mean, I think there's just a few key things I would just raise. So one, I think these are all things that we in the committee have all been fighting, and we had a moment where we had an argument once in our committee meeting about thinking DOT about making a change to 41st to 9th Avenue. And, I was like, we can thank them for putting it in, but we shouldn't be so over the top with it because someone had to die before they did that. Like it's reactionary, and that's just the reality. We live with a lot of challenges. There are so many competing interests. So yeah, I mean, scaffolding, yeah, I keep complaining about that scaffold that's over. Well, the scaffold is newer than the dent in the sidewalk on on 29th and 8th Avenue. What is it going to take for someone to fix that sidewalk that's been dented and broken since, you know, at least the last 20 years? I've lived in the neighborhood, you know, 20 years. It's always been that way. Like, what's wrong? Like, so, you know, and on that same block, we have a concrete ramp that was built by the Dunkin' Donuts that they put in probably illegally for the construction and then just left it there. It's not even an ADA compliant ramp. I mean, these things happen, and it's just, you know, it's a lot of, it's really what it comes down to is our neighbors not in compliance, and there's just not enforcement, and it's, you know, comes down to elected officials. The open dining, the outdoor dining legislation that was passed, you know, we can debate that for a long time here if we want. There's a lot of really good things in that legislation for the sake of the city, but there's also so many gaps that are going to have so many unintended consequences. So it's so, you know, maybe we just need to nominate someone for our committee every 4 years to run for mayor, and, you know, that's how we take care of our problems. You know, I'm gonna say something that's gonna come, you know, a little bit on the other side. I think one of the challenges that we've always had as a committee is with the occasional outlier, which has been very rare and usually not extreme. We are a committee that does tend to have consensus towards alternatives to the automobile for transportation. We rarely get that voice inside of our committee that speaks on behalf of someone who lives in our neighborhood and commutes out to Long Island on a regular basis where there isn't good public transit access. You know, people that are not making a lot of money, but that's their job, that's their career. And I can give you a lot of examples of my neighbors. So because we do not have that voice inside of our committee, we're kind of giving sermons to each other. And so I don't think we're sympathetic to all of our neighbors. I think we should get a little more of a diverse voice on our committee to help give us the other side. So when we are, you know, when we are pulling our hair out over things that we think are failures, I think sometimes it would help if we had someone who could remind us that what we think we're failures, we're not failures for everybody, and some of our neighbors are actually better off when things don't go the way our committee votes. So I think we do need more of a diverse opinion on our committee. But the last thing I want to suggest, because it's more tangible and something I think is something we really can do, especially since we do get interns and other, you know, there are other volunteers I think in the neighborhood that could help. We're constantly saying this is what we want, this is what we need, this is what our neighbors say. There are really good survey tools and mechanisms out there to help us document in an objective way what the actual opinions are. So when we get up and say, this is what we think we need, this is what we want, you know, what are we basing it on? I think there are some good survey tools out there. Maybe the borough president's office can help us implement some of these and roll these out. I'm sure if we pitched it the right way, they might even want it for the entire borough. And I think it would be great if we can find an outside third party that could help us implement it to make sure that we're not biasing our own surveys, that we're really getting good public opinions. Because once we have that, that would also help us direct our energy towards what our community really wants. I think it's okay that, you know, we do have people that have a good deal of expertise on our committee, generating a lot of these thoughts. You know, Christine, your observations, you know, very, you know, thought-provoking observations, and it takes sometimes a certain focus and attention on transportation issues to recognize some of those contradictions and judgments that the city makes almost by default without really thinking it through. But I think if there's a way to find objective data and we're confident in our stance on a number of these things, the data would prove it. And if it doesn't prove it, then we should learn from that as well. So I'm gonna get off the soapbox I didn't build and let someone else speak.
Thanks for not building a soapbox. Sarah, and then I'll go to Viren.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. As others have said, it was pretty striking to see all these points laid out in the format you did. And so this kind of question / suggestion is partially for my own edification. Has this committee ever, worked in tandem with other transportation committees of neighboring community boards or, even just community boards across Manhattan? Because I imagine that, other folks have some of the same issues, desires, concerns, and that maybe if we are trying to think strategically and tactically about how to be, more impactful going forward, there's an element of scale and in joining forces, if there are some common principles or even just policies that multiple of our community boards in Manhattan agree that they want to support, that could be a more powerful proactive communication to someone like DOT to proactively say, this issue has come up multiple times. We as X collection of community boards would like this to be adopted as agency policy. Has anything like that happened in the past? And is that something we would consider?
We have done it with some specific community boards sometime, but not systematically with all the boards in the borough, for sure. So it's a very good idea to go that direction.
Mm-hmm. Do we have some of those relationships already? I imagine, Christine.
Oh yeah, we do. We do. Very good. We have very good relationship with a number of them, with CB7, CB5, CB2, and CB6, and less with the others.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go to, I saw more hands raised, but now that people lowered their hands.
Right.
Okay. Any committee members have any more? Viren, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. I think this ties back into sort of larger issue of streets redesign. I mean, we're talking about bicycle docks, and we're talking about taking over parking lanes. So I think it goes into that little, a bit more comprehensive approach to it, I would suggest. So it's not just simply about sidewalks, but it's about streets and how do we sort of either claim part of it or make them more equitable. So in other words, what I'm saying is that it starts with the sidewalk, but all the other pieces of it.
Yeah, it's really about the streets. I mean, the intent was to discuss the street, and to tell you the truth is that, the level where I'm discussing now is more of, hey, I mean, embedded. It's just like we have had the discussion about Black Lives Matters and racism, etc., and say it's really all those decisions are deeply embedded into the organizations, right? And here what we have is deeply embedded in layers and layers of the city are a discrimination against the people, essentially, what I call pedestrian and other people. So, it looks like the whole city is functioning for the cars and the drivers and not for the people. And you look at all these layers and you see that everything is slanted, everything is biased. And, it seems to me that unless we get to a higher level and say, wait a minute, are we really going to put the people first? And what does that mean? So the top level would be, okay, let's decide we're going to put the people first and streets are for people. And then you have to change all those things. Yeah. And these are all the things you should be changing. Do we agree with that? And to me, that's the question. The question is, I mean, everybody is looking in their teeny tiny box and they are not looking at the big picture, which is where do you show the leadership and where do you show the leadership to? Then the employees of the agencies can say, okay, this is my priority, right? It's like not putting stuff on the sidewalk. I mean, why do we still have that discussion, for Christ's sake?
Brett,
Christian, very quickly, what I was trying to say is that it actually is a much bigger issue. It's not simply about sidewalks, and it's about it's about smart streets, about equitable streets. We're not talking about just sort of
we're talking about people.
We're talking about people, regardless of color, cast or whatever have you.
Right.
Just one of the reasons why I didn't send the entire document, didn't want to discuss the entire document here with you, is because I have sort of expanded the sort of scope of it.
Sure.
And I will be happy to share with everyone at a later date. But we actually did urban design studio at Columbia University called Smart Streets. And that actually looked at comprehensively, not simply on the surface, but also sectionally. In other words, what happens below as well. So I think it's a pretty interesting conversation, but I think it needs to be shaped in such a way that the committee can actually make an informed decision about it.
Well, that's the question I'm putting it on the table, and I realize it's in no shape at this point to be acted upon. But I just wanted to open the discussion, and then we can continue and then maybe break it down into pieces where the committee could take decisions. But I realize we are not there yet, but I really wanted to share that idea.
This is our start.
Right.
Thank you, Darren. Brett, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just because I don't want this to be all about, doom and gloom and despair. So I'll remind Christine where she has changed the entire city's transportation system in the way that a little river becomes a Grand Canyon. So, my recollection, when I was first on the committee starting back in 2008, we didn't have any red turn arrows. We didn't have those split signals anywhere. And that became something I started asking, like, well, can we put this? Because, we had, especially when the bike lane at 9th Avenue was coming in. And so we were suggesting red turn arrows because of the danger of people crossing at green lights. You took up that mantle. And then when you became board chair, you had a much bigger influence citywide on these things. And DOT kept hearing you talking about it over and over again.
Sorry, Brett, but if we turn this into a patting Christine on the back session.
Please, that's not true.
But I'm just saying,
it's the conversation along.
Not just about Christine. It started with our committee. My hunch is the entire city has got these split signals everywhere, especially Manhattan. And it started, I think, with our transportation committee's discussion. So,
the bike corrals, we started with the bike corrals. We started a lot of things. What I'm saying is that we need to go beyond what we have done. That's all. And we want to challenge ourselves to find a smart way to go beyond. And so that's what is on the table here.
Forge a path for ourselves for local changes as well as universal.
Yes.
Okay. I just, in the interest of time, everybody, I think we're going to wrap this. So thank you all for your spirited discussion of this topic. And we're going to move on to bike safety on 8th Avenue. Do we have a
Kelly was right there. Kelly.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I did prepare a little PowerPoint just to organize my thoughts, but I'll start with introducing myself. So I'm Kelly Kapka. I am a civil engineer, actually focused on transportation and highway design. So it's interesting that I'm here to talk about a bike accident that I was in a couple weeks ago. But I work by Penn Station, especially with COVID. I have been using Citi Bike to get around more often than the subway. And so I've been riding Citi Bike to and from Long Island City, which normally takes me down 1st and 2nd Avenue. But there was one particular day here where I was running errands over on the west side and ended up taking 8th Avenue up. And if we go up to the next slide. So basically I was in a bike accident on 8th Avenue. I was riding north on 8th Avenue in the bike lane. There was a truck also going north on 8th Avenue. And at 45th Street, it was turning left. The truck turned left while I was still going straight. The truck basically turned right in front of me. I actually hit the side of the truck. It didn't hit me. It could have been much worse in a split second in either direction. I ended up with a bruised knee. That's it, thankfully. But it even before this accident happened, as I was riding up 8th Avenue, and like I said, I normally take 1st or 2nd. was thinking to myself, I'm never riding up 8th Avenue again. It feels so unsafe. Like there are just pedestrians everywhere, especially Port Authority bus terminal. It's a huge mess. Heavy traffic with all the buses, of course, and everyone going over to the tunnel. And the street dining here, a lot of times isn't curb adjacent because the bike lane is next to the curb. And then you have the street dining kind of in the parking lane, which is between the bike lane and the traffic. So as a cyclist, you kind of get funneled in between the dining and the curb, and you're kind of at the mercy of whatever pedestrians step out in front of you, or turning traffic, which can't see you, which is what happened here. So like I said, I was heading north, the truck was turning, it did not yield. Neither of us really had the time to react. And if you see the picture pointing at the corner there where it happened, I took this right after. It is really hard for anyone to see past the street dining. You have a conflicting movement there. You don't have any signs that warn vehicles of the bike traffic conflict. You don't have split phase signaling or any other indication of, you need to yield to anyone in the crosswalk or the bike lane. I mean, we had a green light and the truck just floored it through the turn. So if we go on to the next slide, I'll walk you through a couple more pictures here. So this is kind of like the perspective from the bike lane. This is taken right in front of the street dining area. So looking north. And if you go to the next slide, this is kind of the driver's perspective. You really can't even see the bike lane at all. I mean, obviously they might see a little bit wider angle than what the picture shows, but it's a really good indication of how the street dining just really restricts the sight distance here. And like I said, there's no split signal, there's no signs warning of the bike conflict. I think if something isn't addressed, then there could be more accidents that maybe, result in more serious injuries. So if you go on to the next slide. All right, yeah, this is just looking west. So you can see the street dining area is pretty large, and they were just constructing it. I don't really know what it looks like today, but it's probably only gotten more filled in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see how it goes pretty high, and they have the ceiling on it and everything. All right, and then next slide. Like I said, I'm a civil engineer, so I had to kind of brainstorm some problems and solutions here. The main thing I think that could be addressed relatively quickly would be the line of sight obstructed by the outdoor dining. This probably isn't just at this intersection. It's got to be relevant all over the city. For some reason, it doesn't seem as bad on 1st and 2nd Avenue, but I think there are just less density of restaurants over there. But really, if somehow the committee could recommend, I don't know who's issuing the permits for the street dining, but just some sort of limit on how close they can get to a corner where there is a conflicting turn movement, that would probably help just keep everyone a little bit safer. The second item here, driver unaware of the bike crossing, which I kind of already mentioned. You can add bike lane signs. There are a ton of them on 1st Avenue and 2nd Avenue. And then just overall, it's a really heavy traffic conflict. I don't know if you guys have studied 8th Avenue and the bike lanes. I mean, I'm sure you have based on everything you guys have been talking about all night, but there's a lot that you can study. There are a lot of potential solutions. Without all the data, I can't recommend anything specific. But it was just obvious to me, even before the accident, that there are issues on 8th Avenue that need to be addressed. And then once I collided with the truck, I was like, well, that just proves it. luckily it wasn't worse. And actually Pete was there. Pete Diaz was there. He helped out with everything. Again, thank you so much, Pete, for like keeping a cool head. He witnessed everything and kind of made sure I was okay. And the truck driver really didn't care what happened. When he got out of his truck, he looked at the truck to see if there was any damage. He didn't ask me if I was okay. Another thing to note there is I was riding a city bike, and those bikes are heavy. It was hard to stop. I knew I was going into the truck like a split second before it happened, but I couldn't stop. So I just chose to collide with the truck so that I would stop, you know, rather than swerving and getting stuck underneath or anything like that. So that is my story, my solutions. Like I said, I'm kind of basing it off of my experience with First and Second Avenue. And I won't take up any more of your time. It's just an example of an issue which I think you guys are already aware of.
So Kelly, yeah, since then I sent the information from Pete to DOT, and they told me that the construction, the dining is not compliant with their guidelines. It's too close to the corner, and they are revising the guidelines for long term, and they are going to make them more stringent.
That's wonderful. Yeah, because with
COVID,
the first thing. The second thing is, yeah.
The second thing is, I think we know DOT is supposed to come back to us with a study of the rest of the 8th Avenue.
Okay.
And so that should be at the next next meeting.
Okay.
And finally, I personally would be very happy to ask them to put a split phase, because we told them many, many times that split phase is probably the best way of.
It really is, yeah. Just based on my experience.
People, you have to slow down, and we know it works. And so I would be happy to send a resolution covering those 3 things.
Kelly, I'm glad you're in one piece. I look forward to you in the next cycle joining CB4 and joining our committee.
Yes. Public memory.
It was very evident from your presentation that particular, I mean, these permits were given so catch as catch can, and it was like such an economic emergency for the restaurants. But I'm glad to hear that they're changing and it's not as close to the sidewalk. I also think wherever there's an end cap towards the intersection, there should be a requirement for like clear signage regarding the bike lane, hidden bike lane. Like
you have even without the street dining, you have the full width of the parking lane in between the turn and the bike. Yeah.
Some standardized graphic that's required of the restaurant to have, you know, a warning to drivers that there's a hidden bike lane, I think would make a lot of sense in that specific instance. And then that, of course, that goes for a lot of places in the city. So Christine, I would say maybe we can recommend that, you know, like thank the DOT for.
We got it.
Okay.
Point of information, there is an office, city office, special enforcement. It's OSE, and they deal with coordinated response for the requirements for the new outdoor restaurants and stuff like that. So it's a specific, because it deals with multiple agencies. It deals with DOB. If the structure's not built right, it deals with DOT. It's called OSE is the acronym, and it's Office of Special Enforcement.
Okay, thanks, David. I'm gonna go to Brett and then Colin.
All right, yeah, thank you. I think, Kelly, I think Dale was trying to sell you a membership, so just remember it's free, so.
It's really cheap.
But no, I'm gonna try not to get too emotional about some of these items. I was already kind of, you know, getting a little upset over some of the legislation that passed so quickly, as Christine and Dale can tell you, as I was spamming them with email on this issue. So I'm going to kind of detour a little bit from this specific location, and I think what this really is this is just another sign that I'm hoping, you know, the agenda next month, we will have an opportunity to really dig into this whole open dining issue, because the legislation went out so fast, and the biggest omission in all of it is probably keeping is not putting the community boards as part of the review process. Just like we review, have historically reviewed the applications for sidewalk cafes, this is essentially a sidewalk cafe, but expanded. Things that we are good at, have experience with, because like any community should know their streets and their sidewalks. You know, we would have flagged their plans for all the things that they were not doing with that outdoor dining. We would have pointed out that they weren't compliant. You know, the barrier is less than 15 inches. It was less than 8 feet from the crosswalk. All the requirements that we are all studying and know, we could have flagged it before they could have built it. Transportation issues, we would have identified the daylighting. We're constantly talking about daylighting in our committee. That's why the 8-foot requirement for the crosswalk is there. That outdoor dining clearly does not have that, and I don't, you know, and even the permit that they should have gotten should not have permitted that particular use. And the other thing that I will point out, that is a great example of what not to do for everybody's safety, is that dining is straddling the bike lane. For anyone who's bicycling, those bike lanes near those outdoor dining, you never know when somebody's going to get up and go across. It's happened to me a couple of times, couple of close calls, and the garbage that collects in those bike lanes by the dining is out of control, and it makes also the bicycling very dangerous. So I think there are just a lot of these issues that if this is on the agenda next month, you know, we might have to clear the rest of the agenda, because this could probably take my slot alone in an hour just to talk about what I'm finding. But so yeah, I mean, thank you for bringing this out. Those images, I think, should help give us momentum in dealing with that outdoor dining, because I think it's what happened with you over there was really what can happen from a transportation standpoint for the bicyclists. This is before we even start talking about the pedestrian issues and ensuring the 8-foot clearance on the sidewalk.
Thanks, Brett. Colin?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in, and I mean, you don't need me to echo this, but I am going to echo this, that I bike on 45th and 8th. I live down the street on 45th and 10th Avenue. So I see this intersection a lot. And I too have noticed that it seems like this one in particular is a touchy intersection. You're biking down and you can't see, I mean, even as a cyclist, I'm looking and I can't really see cyclists coming north. You know, I'm sure nobody in this committee ever is on a bike and runs a red light, but I always look both ways just in case. And I mean, there have been some close calls when I've had the green going west on a bike. So I definitely think that this is an intersection that needs attention. And yeah, I mean, it just goes back to the importance of these split phase. I mean, all along 8th Avenue, there are a number of areas of potential conflict between cars turning left and bicyclists on the bike lane that need to be addressed. And so, you know, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. And I think that this is definitely something that DOT needs to take a look at.
Thanks, Colin. So do we have an action on this, or are we just
Do we still have the Colin user 5
no.
here or not?
No,
okay. All
yeah.
right. Yeah, I would suggest a resolution where we write to DOT and we bring up the issue, and the way Kelly essentially outlined it, which is that the distance, I mean, the visibility is very bad at this intersection with and without the dining. It's even worse with the dining, and we recommend, you know, that the dining be pushed back and probably be pushed back even further when there is a turn lane for, when there is a left turn or a right turn, when it is in the turn, right? And then that we put back split phase. I mean, you know, I think split phase makes a big difference. And we add in their toolkit, the warning sign you were talking about there, you know, that could be put.
And to Brett's point about keeping the bike lane itself unobstructed.
Yeah, well, the problem we have with that is that the design which has been approved should not be covering the buffer lane, and they all cover the buffer lane.
Right.
So normally the idea was, you are in the parking lane. If you come out of the dining, you are in the buffer, right?
They're stealing the buffer lane.
Except that everybody took over the buffer lanes.
Right.
And then now when you come out, and it happened to me today, when you come out of the restaurant, you are in the bike lane.
Right.
And so I think that there is a massive issue of enforcement, which is not going to get better until, middle of next year.
Okay.
And then after that, they have to decide how to enforce all those things that, like Sidewalk Cafe, were enforced, But we know that between now and then, everybody's going to just look the other way.
So Christina's outlined a motion. Does it have a second?
I second
Yep.
it.
Does he have a first? I'm not supposed
I'm
to.
a first. I'll make the motion and someone
Okay.
else will second it.
Okay, go.
Pete was doing it. Okay.
Okay. Christine said it, so we'll save time. Whatever Christine said is the motion.
And Pete.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of this eloquent motion?
Yes. Thank you, Kelly, for coming. This is
Thanks,
very
Kelly. We're saving you.
Thank you so much.
And if we are saving you a seat from now on.
You didn't bargain for that, did you? You can't leave.
I've been a staff member on these meetings before when I worked for City of Orinda in California.
Oh, so you're well.
I've done my time.
Process. Okay, I'm going to move on quickly to the next item, which is helicopter safety. And I neglect.
Dale, I'm sorry, 1 second, just to kind of keep it on the recording. Is there anyone against or abstaining or P&E for this
I'm
item?
sorry. Yeah, were all the votes yes for that motion, or are there any abstentions or no's?
Who dares?
But we also need to hear from the public. We need to hear from public comment.
There was no public.
There were no public comments. Okay, I neglected to identify or recognize the elected representatives that are here, aside from Carl from Speaker Johnson's office. Also, we also have, let's see, we have Emily from Linda Rosenthal's office. We have Matt from Assembly Member Gottfried's office, and we have Maya Berlo from Senator Hoylman's office. Maya, are you speaking on the helicopter legislation? Is that Maya who's speaking, Janine?
So I didn't get a response from anyone, but I can transfer her over.
Okay. Otherwise, we can summarize the legislation or have, who is the?
Hi, the helicopter legislation is federal. It's Nadler's office.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was coming through your office. Or
okay. We are talking about some local helicopter legislation, but that is not fully out there in public yet. But okay. the legislation that's listed on the agenda is federal.
Okay, we did have a member of the community who brought this to our attention. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on who that was.
It's Melody.
Melody, can you speak on this issue?
You have to bring her over.
Melody, I think is identified as Melody. I think she has.
Yeah.
There she is.
What would you like me to say? I mean, I can tell you that it's federal.
Yeah.
I can tell you that the helicopters come for the most part from New Jersey. Over the weekend, they flew 87 sorties over Chelsea.
Oh my gosh.
I cannot concentrate anymore. So I don't know exactly how to make a good presentation, but I can tell you it's impossible. They take a route that goes up the water and then over the top of the park, circle around the reservoir very often, then come down the east side and cross Chelsea.
So this
Sometimes they then go, this is fly NYON, fly New York on.
So this is a sightseeing.
Yes, and it's for tourists to take shoe selfies, take pictures of their feet with unlaced shoes on, sometimes no laces at all.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine called it crack for Instagrammers.
Yeah, we live in an enlarged Instagram trap these days.
Yeah.
Okay, so we just wanted to make everyone on the committee aware of this legislation, aware of the issue. Of course, it is, thank you, Melody. It is problematic in that it is disturbing the residents of the district, and it is not a vital transportation need that's being addressed. It's a sightseeing enterprise. Of course, it is a business, and but the legislation that is going forward, I believe, would limit the number of sorties, or at least limit
the legislation would actually keep tourist helicopters from going over Manhattan at all. And
But
while it's a business,
I thought
it
that
brings
was
no
already the
jobs to
law.
New York.
I thought that was already the law, that tourist helicopters couldn't go over Manhattan.
That was the tourist helicopters from the heliports that we have along the river, our heliports.
Okay.
But we have no control over what comes from New Jersey.
And do we know where that company is based?
I believe it's based in Kearney.
Kearney?
Yes, but they also
Kearney, New Jersey.
leave from Linden and from other places in New Jersey.
Nothing good has ever come out of Kearney.
Ain't it the truth?
Sorry.
So why don't we send a
That's
letter?
not true. They have great Scottish Irish food. I did years
Why
ago.
don't we send a letter to the elected officials over there?
We can, if you look at the coalition partners, the senators have both signed on. I don't know about the representative, but the governor is not on board.
The governor of New Jersey?
Right.
Murphy.
So maybe we can write a letter to the governor and say, I mean, if we don't mind that you have helicopters, but they shouldn't be over Manhattan.
Other community boards, CB7 has signed on. CB2 is going to look at this next month. I'm going to
sign on to what?
Signed on to back the legislation, resolution supporting this legislation.
They're part of the coalition that's behind the legislation.
And we could do that too, but I would go one step further and send a letter to the governor saying this is really a major issue for our community.
Would it make sense to field a joint letter from affected community districts?
Well, I guess if we each individually sign on the legislation, that works the same way.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for looking at this, because those of us in the flight path are losing our minds.
How come it didn't exist before? Is this a new company?
It's a company that was in New York, but at this point moved to New Jersey when they were kicked out of New York. That's my understanding.
They're exploiting a loophole.
That's right. That's right.
They designed the loophole and now they're exploiting it.
Right. And that was actually said when the first legislation went through, which I think was 2016, was that, well, these people are just going to move to New Jersey, and they promptly did that. And of course, during the lockdown, everything was quiet, and now they've come back full speed. And we still don't have the companies who were disallowed from flying from our little heliports are also not. They've been sued and are paying $250,000, but they're still not obeying the law completely.
Okay, so the ask is to sign on the legislation. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always good to write the governor, but it would probably be good for a bunch of community boards to write the governor, because there are a number of us who are in this flight path. They also circle the Statue of Liberty, and the Empire State Building has a contest, and the winner of the contest will get a free flight. NYC Go, which I think is the tourist arm of the city, is partnering with them.
That's ridiculous.
It's out of control. Yeah.
All right. It's not. Are there any salient comments from the committee members? Otherwise, I'm going to go to Alan Oster. Alan.
Hi. Thank you, Dale. And as a Chelsea resident, I'll echo Melody's comments. But to follow up on Dale's comment of the loophole, there's basically, from what I understand, and perhaps it's in the legislation, there's two sets of flight patterns over our city. One that's controlled by EDC for all the charter flights that have to come in, and one that's for basically the tourists, which is mandated by the federal government by the FAA. So that's where it's got to change. So yes, they're in Jersey, but they're following federal guidelines, and that's where it has to be addressed.
Thanks, Alan. All right, so is there a resolution emerging?
Well, I have one more question. Since Melody is saying that they have a partnership with Empire State and with New York City Go, should we send a letter to these people and say, do you realize that they are breaking the law in New York City, and then you are partnering with people which are doing that?
It's not clear to me that they're actually breaking the law as it stands, though.
Yeah, I don't think they're breaking law. They're following prescribed FAA flight
But we can
paths.
say they're a nuisance to the residents of our
A
district.
nuisance and they're a hazard, but that's about, unless you can get the federal government at some point to change the flight patterns.
Well, they're pulling the loophole. I thought, like Christine said, that you couldn't fly into Manhattan for safety reasons. What if a helicopter crashes over such a land population? So I'm startled that even the federal government would allow these flights into Manhattan. I remember the Pan Am building 100 years ago, they stopped the flights. So, I mean, we should also contact, though, because they need goodwill. I forgot the people who own the Empire State Building, but they should be contacted along with whoever runs I guess the mayor's office. He runs the tourism.
My understanding is that the mayor took money from these people and is not going to do anything.
Okay.
still
Well, at a minimum, we
December
could have a
11th.
resolution to support the legislation,
So is there a motion on the floor?
I make the motion. But I would still, as a pro forma move, include the mayor, even though he might have taken money.
Okay.
And I see Viren is seconding, or do you have a comment, Viren?
Well, both. I think we should also include Governor Cuomo, because Hudson River Park falls under the state
All right.
jurisdiction, right?
Do we have all in favor?
Okay, so it's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Present not eligible. Anybody flying a helicopter right now over the city? Okay. The last item before old and new business is the discussion of budget. I think, has everybody weighed in on that? Yeah, go ahead, Christine.
We're done.
We're done, good, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna open it up to new business. And I believe there's
Two items.
There are two items, yes. We have
One about with Hell's Kitchen Hudson Yards Alliance bid.
Yeah.
oh yes, let's yes, for 30th.
Yeah, that should be a quick one.
Yeah, for 30th Street.
Yeah.
Okay, so is somebody addressing that, or should we just briefly summarize? There's
No, I
somebody.
think what's her name is.
Yeah, so Patty, I'm bringing
is here.
Patty over. Give me one
Oh,
second.
she's here. Patty's here.
Yeah.
Great. Hi, Patty. Patty, can you hear me?
Okay, here you go. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
How are
great.
you?
Hi, everyone. So I have an item of new business that I would like to put before the committee. For anyone who doesn't know, my name is Patricia Maltezos. I work for the Hudson Yards Hell's Kitchen Alliance. We're a business improvement district, and we are within CB4. We go from 30th Street to 42nd and 11th Avenue to roughly 9th Avenue. So the item I want to talk about today is adding some green space to 30th Street between 9th and Dyer Avenues. So if you could go to the next slide, I'll show you. So this is the area that I'm talking about. It's 30th Street between 9th and Dyer. There's a number of DDC construction projects, sort of storage areas on the site. Some on 31st Street, some on 30th. And we found out recently that DDC will be turning over a portion of this construction area to DOT, meaning it will be paved and, you know, back into regular use. The specific area is on 30th from Dyer to 9th. So it's the eastern portion of this orange.
Can you move, Janine, can you move the pointer to the place Patty is discussing?
I'm sorry, Patty, where, could you mention it again?
Yeah, sure. It's on 30th Street between Dyer and 9th. So it's the right side of the screen.
So
yeah,
here?
that area
No,
there.
no, no.
So that a little further over to the right, Janine.
Oh, this one here?
Yeah, that orange area there. Yeah, so it's about half a block long. I mean, a long block long, and it's a little around 2 lanes, I would say. It's sort of hard to tell on this diagram. So the bids request is when DDC paves this would be to add or allow us to add planters as a greening space instead of turning a portion of it over to vehicular traffic. We see this as a really congested, construction heavy block, and we would like to do a little interim greening before we could work through a longer term plan where we would, you know, do other types of enhancements. But for sort of the foreseeable future, we'd like to do something. And we see this as an opportunity since DOT is about to take control back over this portion of the street. So the bid would be definitely available to put together sort of like a design plan or meetings with stakeholders, or, you know, financially contribute, any of the above. We're just looking for support from the community board to be able to start moving forward. Does anybody have any questions or other comments about the request?
I wanted to add that the building at the bottom is the, what is it called? The Farley building? No, the
Morgan Post Office.
The Morgan Post Office, but it is 5 stories of that are being converted to a commercial building. So this whole area is now in 1 or 2 years will be, you know, active with a lot of pedestrians or commuters coming in, coming out, etc. So this is not just the back of the post office anymore. It's much more of an active area.
I have a question. Patty, why is I mean, if the purpose is to green much of this, why pave it? Why not leave areas open for, you know, in-ground planting?
I think that could be a great longer term solution, but we're just trying to deal with the DOT deadline. They said in a month they will be giving this sort of back over to DOT. So we thought of a plan that was pretty quick to implement, and planters are pretty quick. But yeah, in-ground plantings or more permanent green spaces is the long-term. I think that's a long-term vision.
But if they pave it, then you got to unpave it. I mean, wouldn't it make
more sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
It make more sense to not pave it? I mean, wouldn't it make sense to have a plan up front so they don't end up paving, or at least leave it for now, you know, leave it, you know, just not do anything until the bid has a plan, and then they can, you know, pave according to that plan.
David,
yeah, we want to take the opportunity because we don't want it to revert to vehicular traffic, and for people to sort of get accustomed to such a huge expanse of, you know, traffic lanes. We want to sort of take a lane back visually, that it's a green space, and eventually make it better for pedestrian or other use.
Is it paved now? What is
I
it
think
now?
underneath.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, underneath it is.
It's torn up, but it's, yeah.
Well, they're
No,
just
it
gonna,
is paved. It's paved and messy.
it's
Yeah.
paved already, so they're just gonna put a topping on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they are going to paint lane of traffic. And instead of painting a lane of traffic, we're telling them paint a lane where we're going to put green.
I see.
That's it.
And then, okay.
Right.
Brett?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Patty.
Hi, Bert.
So a great idea. It's like right by the spur, the Highline spur. It's going to be,
Yeah.
it is already a major access point for the Highline. Given that I don't think it gets a lot of daylight there with the spur at the end of the day blocking late afternoon, and the Farley's kind of blocking the post office, blocking all the good daytime sun most of the year except the heat of the summer. You know, people have a lot of, you know, art and culture experience with the Highline, maybe like a public art display there long term, so you don't have to worry about sunlight, and, you know, something that might be a really cool gateway to the Highline. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion for the long term, you know, vision for the space.
The Highline has an art program, right? Maybe you can
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
tie into that.
Yeah.
Well, you know, anything is better than a lane of traffic.
Yeah,
that's my motion.
Yeah.
I think we're
Yeah.
generally supportive of this, and like make the suggestion about like potentially partnering with Highline for an art program component.
Right.
But the more green in this area, the better.
Yep.
So do we have a motion?
The support, I move that we support the bids
Okay.
proposal.
And Martin is second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Anyone opposed? Anyone peanutty? Great, thank you.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Do we have the representative from the Winston School? Aviva?
From, yeah.
Or is it Paul from the
I'll transfer Paul over.
Okay. Hi, Paul. This is regarding 16th West 16th Street. We had some back and forth between the DOT's interest in providing the street for outdoor school use, and Paul can fill us in on where we're at once he goes live. Paul, can you hear me?
You went
Unmute.
here.
Hey, Paul.
Here I am.
Great.
I wanted to show my video. There we go. Here I am.
Here you go.
Quickly, can everyone else go mute so that because I'm getting a little static, so Paul can speak.
Okay, how's that? You know, I'm going to do this. Hang on. How's that? Is that good? Yeah, okay.
That is better. Thank you.
That's better. Good. My wife was on the computer over here, and it's just background. Anyway, yeah, so the woman from the Westport School floated an email to a neighbor who said, does anybody know anybody on 16th Street that we could talk to? And then that got copied to me. So I have not actually talked to the school yet. It looks like DOT has said they can use our block for outdoor recreational activities, and they can close it down to parking cars during those periods. The whole thing is just unplanned, a morass, and there's mixed feelings on our block about whether we want to welcome them or not, but not under the current circumstances. It's really hard to imagine how this would work. with the current street cleaning plans of once a week, people park their cars and don't move them for 5 or 6 days. If with a 3-day notice that they're supposed to move their cars because the school's going to be using the block, they're not going to move their cars. Then what happens? Does the city tow them, or do they get tickets, or the whole thing? We don't understand. I'd like to. I talked to Matt Green. He's willing to sort of sit us down to talk with the DOT and with the school. What we're thinking is if we could close off, if we could deny all parking during school hours, however the school wants to define them, at one end of our block every school day, then the school would have access to that section of the block on a regular basis without, oh, we're going to be there this day or that day and we got to move the cars, or we're not going to have to move the cars in order to get the space. What are we going to do? Just consistent spot on our block every school day during whatever hours the school wants, no parking. And just set it up like that. Then they can close out. And I argue that it should be at the west side of this end of the street, because they can block the traffic right there so the traffic doesn't come down the block. They only have to put up barricades at one end of the street because nobody will come down the other end because they won't know about it. So it makes it just convenient. It should make it more convenient for the school, and it makes it more convenient for the people in our block, and it makes it safer for the kids because they'll have a larger area to play in. And also that's the near end of the block where there's less construction. We only have 5 or 6 construction projects on our block. The further down they get, the more there's going to be trucks backing up, loading stuff, scaffolding, Michigas. So anyway, Matt Green is orchestrating a discussion between us, and I think that's the next step.
All right, great. Well, thanks for giving us that outline. Yeah, it was evident from all the correspondence that the stakeholders were not engaged in the process at all. Janine, can you just check? I think you were saying that maybe one of the call-in users is from Winston. I thought that was the person who was
Avika.
So it was Aviva and Sandy were supposed to join for tonight, but I don't see them on the attendees list.
Okay.
There's caller in user 5.
No.
One of you?
No.
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 Okay.
No.
So, I mean, can we help you with this, Paul, or is it something that you want to see how Matt stewards it?
Let's see how Matt stewards it. Okay, we should, to the extent you can job on DOT to be flexible in their arrangements here, that would be useful. But other, like it'd be, so what we'd want is for DOT to put up signs that say no parking on these particular spaces between 7 and 3, 5, whatever the school wants.
I don't
weekdays.
think, maybe Paul, maybe you could just send Christine and I like what you outlined as what you see as the best solution right now, so that we are aware and can advocate in, when we're called upon.
I wrote that block today based on, because I heard this was going to come up. Several things. One is Roberta brought up the safety of the children with all the construction. So Paul answered that portion, I guess that portion, but also I think there's an experimental loading zone that was put there. So how will this affect the loading?
They may have to move the loading zone too.
For the residents on that block. I don't know if this is a good block for the, I don't mean to insult you. I don't think it's a good block for this to be open streets for the school. So if it was adults and people just going by, that's another situation. But for school children, they'd need a lot of supervision with all the traffic and all the stuff that's happening on that particular block.
Winston says they were going to provide all that supervision. Their alternative is to go to 17th Street, and DOT says they can't do that because of the parking garages there. Another alternative might be 18th Street, but 18th Street is a wider street and gets a lot more heavy traffic than even we get. We're kind of sympathetic to Winston's problem.
Okay, my concern is also about the loading zone, because I think that people
So
need
DOT may have to move that.
It needs to be organized. What is this loading zone you are talking about?
There's a temporary loading zone in 2 sections on our block that's
Oh,
no
yes.
parking. Okay, but yeah.
Right.
And one of those would be at that
But
near
what
end of
about
the block.
the construction? Is it to the east?
Most of the construction is east in the middle, eastern end of the block. In the
But
middle
don't
of the
they
block.
need all the trucks to go through the street anyway?
Well, if they go through, the trucks are usually there early in the morning and late in the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
During the day, you know, the school is closed.
Yes.
School has said, if somebody comes down the block that needs to be there because they live on the block, the school will pull the children
Flag
aside
it.
and let the traffic through. Okay, so I mean,
Well,
there's,
there was no perfect solution at this point.
there is no perfect
Clearly,
solution.
clearly.
Really.
Unless
Okay, yes, tell us
one of your-
what you want, and then when
you have a
people,
rooftop somewhere that you're hiding.
Right.
so yes, send us a note. That's a good idea, Dale.
I will do that.
Yeah,
I will do
please,
that.
please send us
Okay.
an outline of what
All
your
right.
solution is, because it sounds like the only decent one right now.
Is this
All right. I think with that, is there any other new business? Then I think we are going
I
to.
think Roberta might want to say
Roberta,
something.
Roberta had her
Someone-
hand up,
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Roberta.
and diagnostic has her hand up. We have
Roberta?
diagnostic.
A couple of things. Number one, the construction starts midway on the block. That's number one. We have the IRT substation. The reason we put those loading places on the block was because of the traffic we had so that people could get deliveries. And it would take some of the traffic so it wouldn't block the traffic coming down the block. We have a lot of seniors on this block who are with walkers, who are and canes and walking slowly. And if you're going to put tents up, and if this is going to be on the sidewalk, let them do the sidewalk on 17th Street. There are I don't know why they always wind up coming back to 16th Street. I'd like to see number one, they did not contact us. We didn't hear anything about it. Number two, as far as I know, they didn't contact you all about it either. Number three, they did not give us a report as to why 18th Street is not viable or 17th between 6th and 5th. This is a highly residential block. We've had all these construction sites that we have been living with for the last couple of years and the stupid bus that we had. So I don't know whether the DOT has something against us or what, but what they always say, let 16th Street do it. Well, not this time around. Not the last time and not this time. Honestly, we're going to put up a major fight about this.
Okay.
I mean, the kids should have a place, but they should have a safe place. I mean, half the time I don't know where to go with the dog because on one side we have all this jackhammering and on the other side we have more construction. There's no place to walk. So where are these kids going to go?
Okay.
Diagnostic.
One other point could I make, please, briefly?
Sure.
We had submitted 2 plans for open streets on our block, which we never heard about from DOT. Okay, and then all of a sudden they say, "Oh yeah, but we can put a school exercise ground in your block." So I mean, DOT's lack of communication here is just appalling.
What about diagnostic?
Diagnostic.
Hi, it's Susan Numeroff. How are you?
Susan,
I'm
yes.
sorry. I don't know why my iPad says that, but anyway,
okay.
I guess because we owned laboratories at one time. I'm addressing today because there seems to have been a letter that CB4 had written to Gail Brewer in November 2019 regarding the kiosks that are on 8th Avenue and the request.
I'm sorry, is this a new item?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we're closing up on 16th Street then? Okay, please go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I thought you were addressing 16th Street, but please go ahead.
Okay. So there was a letter that was addressed by CB4 to Gail Brewer requesting for the removal of the link stations on 8th Avenue. On July the 13th of 2020, Gail Brewer wrote a letter to Jessica Tisch about the link stations on 8th Avenue, but also included CB4's proposed alternative site, which would be put on 10th Avenue. There's a bit of confusion as we have not seen any official letter that came from CB4 asking that those kiosks on 8th Avenue be replaced on 10th Avenue. So at this time, the community is concerned that surrounding 10th Avenue between 14th and 23rd Street regarding the new link stations. There seems to be an oversight to what is actually happening in our community on 10th Avenue. And the lack of outreach to our businesses, schools, restaurants, and residents needs to happen. And at this time, there's a group of galleries, building developers, schools, businesses, and residents that would like to speak to this matter. Shifting a problem from one neighborhood to another neighborhood is not the answer, and we request for CB4 at this time to review the recommendations of moving the kiosks to 10th Avenue. I have more, but I think everybody's tired.
So I want to take that. So then what happened then is that we said we wanted to remove them, the people of 8th Avenue, the blocks there said we wanted to remove them. Gail Brewer came back and said, well, you know, if the agreement we have with DOITT and the links is that when we remove something, we tell them an alternate. The people who came from 8th Avenue came to propose that, told us that they did an outreach and a survey on 10th Avenue, and they gave us the alternate locations. And
okay,
so yeah.
Sorry.
Let me finish that.
Okay.
So that's what we did. We proposed those because the person who was in charge, including Pam Wolf, which usually is pretty thorough in her outreach, gave us those information. Now, if you are not happy with those locations, by the way, nothing is happening right now, right?
Yes, that I agree with.
We don't have confirmation, we don't have denial, we don't have anything, nothing is happening. So if those locations are not good, well, you know, you should send us a letter and say we totally oppose those locations and tell us where you want them to be.
Well, we don't want to push anything to any other place that's a problem. And Christine,
but you know, we can't function without having a location.
Okay, but just to backtrack on the conversation about 8th Avenue, 23rd Street was documented on 23rd and 10th with photographs and was spoken about at a police block meeting and also with Pam Wolf. And it was decided at that point that they would not discuss the 10th Avenue issues with the kiosks, that they would start first with 8th Avenue. So I'm not quite sure where that change happened. In the meantime, I have documentation and photographs of what has happened and what's happening now with the streets. We have 3 restaurants and a school on one of the proposed streets, which is 22nd and 23rd Street, which is just a half a block from a kiosk that's already in existence. A block from there, we have a Catholic school, we have the park, and then we have nursery schools. And the next kiosk goes in front of the galleries. And they have also said that there is something they have outreached with DOT proposal for the installation of fine art sculptures on that street to revive the gallery block there.
No, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I'm just saying the only thing we can do is that if you send us a letter saying you don't want those locations, we would like you to tell us where they should go, because that's the problem we have.
Well, that's just, I don't know if that would be the I think we have to discuss the kiosks as a situation of a problem in the city. And I don't propose to take a problem that's...
We have discussed the kiosk in the city for years. And I can tell you we have done every possible thing to reduce the numbers we put in our neighborhood, and including many, many meetings between Gail Brewer and DOITT and links. So this is something on which we have spent an enormous amount of time. Again, I mean, send us a note and we'll take it from there.
Okay, I'll have letters from all the people in the neighborhood
Yeah,
that can send them,
send
and
us a-
and then we can bring this up again. But thank you very much for your time.
Sure.
Good night.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, Joyce, I think we're gonna,
Motion to adjourn.
thank you. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
What a monumental meeting. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.